Chapter 387. The 10th Elder is right. There are only 3 days left for the assessment. The 5 people recommended by Shun Yunlian have all arrived. Shen Tianpeng smiled bitterly. Others saw him as the leader of the Shun family and the leader of the family. However, he knew his own difficulties. A huge family had to be run with caution. As the leader, he had to be careful with his words and actions. He could not afford to make a single mistake. There were many things that were beyond his control. The elders of the family had to make a joint decision. The Shun family of the Tianmu territory was indeed a branch of the Shun family of the Tianlan True Domain. However, they were separated by millions of miles. For countless years, the Shun family of the Tianmu territory did not offer much. Instead, they used up the family's resources. This made the elders and members of the family very unhappy. It was the time for the Cebu Gakuin assessment. Shen Yunlian sent another 5 geniuses. Needless to say, he wanted to get a place to participate in the assessment. Normally, the Shun family would be happy if Shun Yunlian sent geniuses to the Shun family. This was because they did not take up much of the family's resources. However, 5 geniuses were sent this time. It was obvious that they were here for the assessment. Leader, Shun Yunlian did not contribute to the family at all. Instead, he took up the family's resources. We don't need him. I will not give up my spot. I want to enter the Cebu Gakuin. What geniuses can he send? The previous 4 were just SOSO. They couldn't even take 1 hit from me. How can a country bumpkin from a remote place be qualified to participate in the Cebu Gakuin assessment? What a joke. We have done our best to let them stay in the Shun family. Hearing Shun Tianping's words, the elders' faces turned cold. They looked at Shun Tianpeng, wanting to know how he would deal with this. However, the geniuses of the Shun family could not hold it in anymore. They started to discuss with dissatisfaction. They were the strongest geniuses among the younger generation of the Shun family. They had reached the peak of the half-saint realm before the age of 50. Basically, they were all 8th or 9th tribulation half-saints. Among their peers, they were definitely the strongest. Cebu Gakuin recruited disciples once every 10 years. If they missed this opportunity, they would have to wait for another 10 years. However, most of them could not afford to wait. Once they fell behind, they would fall behind for life. Moreover, each person could only participate in the assessment once in their lifetime. Let him settle down first. Let them become outer disciples of the Shun family. Being able to become an outer disciple of the Shun family is already very good to them. We can't possibly destroy the future of the Shun family's disciples. Moreover, even if we give them a place to participate, it will only be a waste. What do you think, clan leader? The 2nd elder, who had been silent all this while, opened his mouth. After saying that, he looked at the clan leader who was sitting in the main seat. The elders and geniuses glanced at the patriarch, Shun Tianpeng. Patriarch, as soon as the 2nd elder finished speaking, before the patriarch could speak, an unparalleled holy aura came from outside the hall, and the space was constantly distorted under the holy aura. A cold voice resounded through the hall. Instantly, all the experts present were startled. Then, he looked puzzled and worshipful. The ones who didn't understand were naturally the elders and patriarchs. Of course, it was the monstrous geniuses present. Soon, a figure appeared at the entrance of the main hall. A young man in snow-white robes walked in. The young man walked with majestic steps and was extremely domineering. Elder brother, Brother Ling Xiao. When the young man entered the hall, the geniuses present all greeted him. Their faces were filled with respect and admiration. Ling Xiao was the #1 genius among the younger generation of the Shun family. He learned to read at the age of 3, Xiantian at 5, Vientian at 10, Heavenly Being at 20, and Half-Saint at 30. 3 years ago, he was already a 9th tribulation half-saint. In the St. Martial Heavenly City, he was known as one of the top 10 pinnacle experts. His sword cultivation was sky-high, and he was invincible among those of the same level. It was certain that he would become a saint. He was the most likely person in the Shun family to become the great sage. However, he was unlucky. During the previous Cebu Gakuin's recruitment, His cultivation was not enough, and he missed it. Ling Xiao is here. What's the matter? The patriarch asked with a smile. When the other elders present looked at Ling Xiao, they were also smiling. He was the most likely person in the Shun family to become the great sage. If he became the great sage, the Shun family status would rise by another level. I heard that Shun Yunlian sent a few geniuses here. For Shun Qingqing's sake, I'll give a chance. I'll suppress my cultivation. If they could take a hit from me, they'll get a spot. Shun Lingxiao said indifferently. His tone was as if he was making a decision for the patriarch. All right, Ling Xiao, watch your actions. The patriarch smiled. However, he was extremely unhappy. The patriarch, did not even say anything. A disciple had already made the decision for him. However, Shun Lingxiao's talent was heaven-defying, and he was also from the Grand Elder's faction. They were all aware of Shun Lingxiao's strength. He was a ninth tribulation half-true saint. Even if they were in the same level, they could not take a hit from him. Not to mention a few poor fifth tribulation half-true saints. Lin Yi was brought to the Shun family's residence. Looking at the huge maze of the Shun family's residence, he could only be shocked. First-grade families were indeed powerful. Here, one could meet geniuses everywhere. Moreover, these geniuses were extremely strong. Even he had to treat them seriously. Wait here first. The guard arranged Lin Yi in the living room. The maid served fragrant tea, cupped her fists slightly, and left. He was not polite to Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi naturally knew that he was an outsider from the heavenly purification territory. He was not in the eyes of others at all. There was no reason for the guard to be polite to him. Ding, 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 half an hour later. The fragrant tea in front of Lin Yi had already turned cold, but he did not show the slightest impatience at all. There was a trace of a smile at the corner of his mouth. At this time, a series of footsteps sounded, and they were walking towards the living room. Soon, a few experts of the Shun family appeared in Lin Ye's line of sight. The leader was a middle-aged man in blue who looked to be in his 40s. His body exuded the aura of a superior, and the aura of a saint wrapped around his body, giving people a huge sense of oppression. Beside him was a young man who looked to be in his mid-20s. The young man was dressed in snow-white clothes, and he looked elegant and cold. Behind him were a few young men and women in their 20s, and all of them were Ninth Tribulation half-true saints. When they came to the living room, their eyes fell on Lin Yi. Their eyes were full of disdain and contempt when they looked at Lin Yi, as if they were looking at a beggar on the roadside. I am Lin Yi. Greetings, senior. Lin Yi stood up and bowed to the middle-aged man. He did not know who had come, but he could tell that this middle-aged man was a great sage and not an ordinary saint. Even if he was at his peak, he could only run if he faced this middle-aged man. The young man beside him gave people a sense of extreme danger. Lin Yi secretly noted this in his heart. You are the person recommended by Shun Yunlian? Shen Tianpeng glanced at Lin Yi. He walked towards the main seat. After taking his seat, he asked Lin Yi. He had no intention of letting Lin Yi sit. The other young men took their seats after Shen Tianpeng sat down. In the living room, Lin Yi stood alone. Indeed, the great emperor asked me to come. Lin Yi replied politely. Chapter 388. Brother Lin. At this time, a familiar voice came from outside the living room. Then, a few familiar figures appeared in front of Lin Ye's eyes. Who else could it be other than Chun Yu and the others? Chun Yu, Tian Yi, Murong Nan, and Dishi Xiao. The four of them entered the living room and saw Lin Yi. Their faces were filled with joy, but when they saw the other monstrous experts of the Qin family, their faces were filled with fear and displeasure. How long have you been here? Lin Yi glanced at Shun Yu and the other three. Seeing that the four of them were not injured, he was relieved. The injuries during the teleportation were not serious. In the end, it was Lin Yi who protected them. After they came out, they recovered quickly. However, Lin Yi was left with serious injuries. Brother Lin's injuries. Dishi Xiao and the others looked at Lin Yi carefully and found that Lin Yi did not have any injuries on the surface. But the injuries were still left. After so long, the injuries had not healed. They did not dare to imagine how serious the injuries were during the last teleportation. They were extremely grateful. If it was not for Lin Yi protecting them with injuries, they would have disappeared during the teleportation. Without waiting for Dishi Xiao to finish, Lin Yi waved his hand to stop him. This was the Chun family. With the Chun family here, it was not the time for them to reminisce. I am the Chun family patriarch. Are you willing to become the outer disciples of the Chun family? Shen Tianpeng asked. He looked at Lin Yi and sized him up. Fifth tribulation, half-true, sane at the age of 20, he was considered a decent genius. To be able to reach such a level in a remote place like the heavenly cleansing territory was already amazing. But in the St. Martial heavenly city, it was not eye-catching. Even becoming an outer disciple of the Chun family would be a bit difficult. Hearing Shen Tianpeng's words, Tian Yi, Dishi Xiao, Chen Yu, and Murong, then could not help but look at Lin Yi. Although they had not been in the heavenly wave true domain for long, they had heard about the recruitment of disciples by Sibu Gakuin. What they wanted most was to join Sibu Gakuin. Even if the hope was small, becoming a disciple of the Chun family was not what they wanted. Moreover, he was only an outer disciple. Outer disciples had no status at all. They didn't even receive any special treatment. In other words, the outer disciples were just servants of the Shun family. Outer disciple, I would like to participate in the Sibu Gakuin assessment. Senior, please grant my wish. Lin Yi bowed to Shen Tianpeng. With his own strength, he was confident that he could become a disciple of Sibu Gakuin. He was not willing to stay in the Shun family, let alone as an outer disciple. No matter how useless Lin Yi was, he would not be a servant of a Shun family. This junior is the same. Senior, please grant my wish. This disciple also wishes to participate in the test. This junior is the same. Tian Yi, Di Shi Xiao, and the others also spoke after Lin Yi spoke. Naturally, they did not want to become outer disciples of the Shun family. This was not just a status, but also a sign that the Shun family was looking down on them. If the Shun family really treated them as humans, they would at least be a disciple, not an outer disciple. They would rather go to a second or third grade sect or family than be an outer disciple of the Shun family. With their talent and strength, they would at least be an inner disciple in a second grade family. Silence after they finished speaking. The living room was extremely quiet. The atmosphere was oppressive. The disdain on the faces of the Shun family's monstrous geniuses became even stronger. They were overestimating themselves. People from remote places also wanted to participate in the test. So be it. Don't waste the Shun family's quota and resources. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think we can participate just because you said so? Can the Shun family's quota be wasted so casually? In the Shun family, there are at least 800 geniuses who want to participate in the test, if not 1,000. All of them are geniuses. You want quota? Ha ha ha. Shen Nanqing looked at Lin Yi and the others as if they were idiots. When he opened his mouth, it was full of ridicule. As one of the top monstrous geniuses of the Shun family, he was naturally qualified to participate in the Sibu Gakuin's examination. His goal was to become an outer disciple of the Sibu Gakuin. After he finished speaking, he laughed loudly. The atmosphere in the living room was extremely strange. Lin Yi and the others' expressions were extremely ugly. They had traveled hundreds of millions of miles to the true heavenly wave domain, but they were ridiculed like this. It was a naked humiliation. Do you speak on behalf of the patriarch? Among the few of them, Lin Yi's expression was the calmest. Looking at Shen Nanqing, he could see through Shen Nanqing's cultivation and strength. Both of them were ninth tribulation half-true saints, but there was absolutely no half-true saint in the heavenly purification territory who could be his opponent. Even if Lin Yi encountered him, it would not be easy for him to defeat him easily. However, if it was a battle to the death, he had countless ways to kill him. However, he was not concerned about Shen Nanqing. Instead, he was concerned about the young man in the lead. Shun Lingxiao. Only the Shun family's genius could pose a strong threat to him. The Shun family's quota. Indeed, it's not enough. Shen Tianpeng said. No matter how monstrous an outsider was, they were not as good as their own disciples, unless they were outsiders who could bring benefits to the family. It was obvious that the 5 geniuses in front of them could not bring benefits to the Shun family. If you want a quota, it's not like there is no way. The Shun family cherishes talents. If you have the strength, the Shun family will give you a chance. If you are trash, the Shun family will not waste the quota. If you can suppress your cultivation and take a hit from Big Brother Ling Xiao, we will give you a quota. A Shun family's genius sitting beside Shun Ling Xiao had a contemptuous smile on his face. His gaze swept over Lin Ye's group of 5 before he opened his mouth and said, "This, Tian Yi and the others' expressions changed continuously. They had just reached the 5th tribulation, half-true, saint realm. However, Shun Ling Xiao was the Shun family's #1 genius. Even if he suppressed his cultivation to the 5th tribulation, half-true saint realm, he could kill them with a casual slap. They had no chance of getting a quota. Okay, I will try." Dishi Zhao's mind struggled for a while before he gritted his teeth and agreed. If he came to the heavenly wave, true domain, and was unfamiliar with the place, he would have a chance to become a disciple of the Cebu Gakuin if he participated in the assessment. That way, he would be able to settle down. After he finished speaking, he operated his cultivation method. The high-grade saint-level cultivation method exploded with terrifying power. His whole body's defense reached the peak. In his hand, a ball of blue light condensed. This was the Dishi family's signature martial skill, Heavenly Water Cloud Light, a high-grade saint-level martial skill. As a half-true saint, he had already mastered the Heavenly Water Cloud Light. "You are too weak." Shun Ling Xiao sat on the chair with no intention of getting up. He did not even look at Dishi Xiao. His cold voice almost froze the air in the living room. His arrogant attitude basically treated Dishi Xiao and the others as air and directly ignored them. However, when the voice rang out, Shun Ling Xiao casually waved his palm, and a destructive palm power smashed towards Dishi Xiao. The palm power contained an unparalleled light, and wherever it passed, the space would shatter. Bang, puff! Dishi Zhao's eyes revealed a look of horror. The ball of blue light condensed in his hand met the attack. Along with a slight cracking noise, the power of Jihao's palm directly shattered the light sphere, then struck on Dishi Zhao's chest. Dishi Xiao only felt his body quiver, as if his entire body was falling apart. His body was violently thrown away and finally fell outside the living room. Chapter 389. Thud, with a muffled sound, Dishi Xiao fell to the ground. There were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his face was pale and powerless. He was even more shocked. He was known as one of the top 10 peak monstrous experts in the Heavenly Sun Empire, standing at the peak of the younger generation. Even among the billions of people in the Heavenly Purification Territory, he was one of the most monstrous experts. In the Great Xiao World ruins, he had obtained a great opportunity. His cultivation had reached the 5th tribulation half-true saint. His strength was terrifying, but he never expected that after coming to the Heavenly Wave true domain, he couldn't even take a casual palm strike. This was truly shocking. If Shun Ling Xiao didn't suppress his cultivation, it would be better. But Shun Ling Xiao suppressed his cultivation, and his realm was the same as Dishi Xiao, 5th tribulation half-true saint. In the end, Dishi Xiao couldn't take Shun Ling Xiao's palm strike. Not only him, but Shun Yu, Tian Yi, Murong Nan, and Lin Yi were also shocked. Their hearts were filled with shock. They were deeply afraid of Shun Ling Xiao's strength. The monstrous experts of the Heavenly Wave true domain were indeed terrifying. In front of the monstrous experts of the Heavenly Purification Territory, the difference between the monstrous experts of the Heavenly Wave true domain was like the difference between an ant and a giant dragon. On the other hand, the monstrous experts of the Shun family didn't have the slightest ripple. It was as if it was natural that Dishi Xiao couldn't take Shun Ling Xiao's palm strike. In other words, it would be strange if Dishi Xiao could take Shun Ling Xiao's palm strike. Let me. Tian Yi's face was solemn. He took a step forward, and his terrifying sword talent was displayed. A low-grade sacred artifact appeared in his hand, and his whole person was like a sword god. A terrifying sword domain revolved around him, forming an unparalleled sword shield. Crash, using offense as defense, his sword Dao was unparalleled, and his sharpness was unparalleled. Offense was the strongest defense. Tian Yi's sword slashed out, and the might of the sacred artifact combined with the sword domain shattered the entire space. The sword light went straight for Shun Lingxiao. Even a peak-level monstrous expert of the same level would have no choice but to retreat from this sword. Not bad. Among the Shun family's geniuses, he can enter the top 100. However, you will never understand the strength of the strong. Shun Lingxiao's cold voice sounded. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes, but it was only for a moment. In the face of that unparalleled destructive sword light, his expression did not change at all. Not even a ripple appeared on his face. With a casual wave of his hand, a palm energy exploded. The palm force broke through the air and collided with the sword light in an instant. Crack, the unparalleled palm power directly crushed the sword radiance. The sword light disappeared. The palm force pressed forward, smashing fiercely before Tian Yi. Its speed was extremely fast, and there was almost no spatial distance between them. Tian Yi did not even have a chance to react, and his body was sent flying by the palm force. It was a casual palm strike. Tian Yi followed in Dishi Zhao's footsteps. Sai, this is the so-called genius in Shun Yunlian's eyes? Looking at the sky from the bottom of a well, what a joke. Shun Fei looked outside the living room in disdain and said with a pout. Not to mention Shun Lingxiao's palm, even the two of them just now couldn't take one of his moves. How could they be considered geniuses? What a joke. They still wanted the quota of the Shun family. They didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Forget it. Murong Nin sighed. If Dishi Xiao was careless, then Tian Yi's sword had unleashed his strength to the peak. Even so, Tian Yi was still unable to withstand a single blow. Even Tian Yi had been defeated, and he did not have much hope. After all, Tian Yi's strength was similar to his. He wanted the quota very much, but he knew that it was obviously impossible. Rather than going forward and being humiliated, he might as well withdraw. I don't want a quota either. The corner of Shun Yu's mouth revealed a trace of bitterness. He came to the Tianlan True region without any dignity. If not for his strong martial arts heart, he really wanted to return to the Tianyang Empire, inherit the position of the next great emperor, and live a carefree and happy life for 100 years. Your strength is not enough. Your talent is not enough. But you still have a little self-awareness. And that wild thing, do you still need to try? Shen Wuxiu looked at Lin Yi and the others with a smile. In his eyes, these country bumpkins from the Tiamu territory were undoubtedly clowns. Finally, his gaze fell on Lin Yi. For a moment, everyone in the Shun family looked at Lin Yi with a disdainful smile on their faces. Try it. Patriarch, if I can withstand Shen Lingxiao's palm, will the quota be given to me? Lin Yi took a step forward. His eyes looked at Shun Tianpeng on the main seat and asked. As for Shun Lingxiao and the other Shun family prodigies, he completely ignored them as if they were air. What do you think the Shun family is? It's just a quota. If you can really withstand Ling Zhao's palm, the quota will be given to you. Shen Tianpeng was stunned at first. Then, a cold expression appeared on his face. A mere half-step saint dared to doubt him, the Shun family's patriarch. If it were someone else, he would consider it. After all, the quota was very precious, but he believed in Shun Lingxiao. There were very few people in the same realm who could withstand his palm, not to mention a few Fifth Tribulation half-step saint from the Tiamu territory. Thank you, Patriarch. Lin Yi looked at Shun Tianpeng seriously. He bowed slightly to Shun Tianpeng, but his voice was incomparably cold. Screech, when the Shun family members saw Lin Yi's appearance, they couldn't help but sigh. They couldn't figure out who gave him such confidence. It was as if they could receive Shun Lingxiao's palm to obtain the quota. Humph! Shun Lingxiao snorted coldly. After waiting for 10 breaths, Lin Yi didn't make the slightest move. He didn't have any intention of circulating his cultivation technique to resist. Seeing this, he felt a trace of disgust. With a cold snort, he slowly struck out with his palm. It seemed slow and casual, but it had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The space shattered and the air was sucked out. Everyone present felt a huge pressure. Even Shun Tianpeng, the great sage, showed a trace of surprise. Not to mention a 5th tribulation half-step saint. Even a 9th tribulation half-step saint or an early saint might not be able to withstand this palm. Compared to Shen Lingxiao's attack on Tian Yi and Di Xiao, it was more than several times stronger. Even at this time, Lin Yi still didn't make the slightest move. This situation was seen by the people of the Shun clan. They thought that Lin Yi had been scared silly and had forgotten to dodge or block. Absolute defense. Divine Dragon 9 transformations. Lin Yi stood in the same place. When he saw that the palm light was about to hit him, he casually waved one hand, and a Taiji shield appeared in front of him. The starry sky divine art circulated continuously. The Divine Dragon 9 transformations also erupted. Instantly, the Taiji shield shielded him tightly. Seeing Lin Ye's actions, the Shun family members couldn't help but show a disdainful smile. He wanted to rely on this thin shield to block Shun Lingxiao's terrifying palm. He was overestimating himself. Boom, the whole process seemed to take a long time. But it was only a moment. The palm light fiercely bombarded the Taiji shield, and a terrifying muffled sound rang out. Unparalleled wind raged. The seemingly thin light shield that could be blown away by a gust of wind trembled violently. The Shen family's geniuses present were shocked, and their eyes were full of disbelief. Because although the light shield trembled, it didn't shatter in the end, and forcibly blocked Shun Lingxiao's palm. Lin Ye's body trembled slightly. From beginning to end, he didn't take a step back. In the living room, it was incomparably strange. Everyone looked at Lin Yi as if looking at a monster. A casual light shield blocked Shun Lingxiao's peerless attack. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one would dare to believe it. But this was the truth. Chapter 390. Not bad. You were able to withstand a casual palm strike. You can be proud of this. Shun Lingxiao's eyes were calm. He stood up and walked out of the living room. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even look at Lin Yi, even though Lin Yi had casually received his palm strike. Arrogant. Very arrogant. In his eyes, Lin Yi wasn't even comparable to his eyes. A mere 5th tribulation, half-true saint wasn't worthy of his attention. Or rather, looking at an ant was an insult to his eyes. Indeed, a casual palm strike had suppressed his cultivation. So what if he could withstand it? In a real battle, even if he suppressed his cultivation, he could kill someone of the same realm in seconds. Not to mention, he was only a step away from the saint realm. There were very few half-true saints who could be his opponent. Even if there were, it would be the peak experts of the Saint Martial Heavenly City and Cebu Gakuen. 3 days later, follow the Shun family to the Saint Martial Heavenly Mountain. From now on, you have nothing to do with the Shun family. As the Patriarch, I expel the Shun family from the Heavenly Purification Territory. Shen Tianpeng stood up. He led the other Shun family's experts out of the living room. Outside the living room, Shun Tianpeng's voice sounded. His voice was extremely cold. One spot. The Shen family had one less spot to participate in the assessment. In other words, the so-called genius from the Heavenly Purification Territory was going to waste the Shun family's quota and resources and ruin the future of a genius disciple. Naturally, he wouldn't think that Lin Yi would become a disciple of Cebu Gakuen, because even if there was a spot, Lin Yi wouldn't have the slightest chance, not even the slightest chance. Brother Lin, do your best. Di Xiao came to Lin Ye's side, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said. A total of 5 people came. Now, only Lin Yi had a spot to participate in the assessment. Although they were envious and jealous, they hoped that Lin Yi could pass the assessment smoothly and become a disciple of Cebu Gakuen. He wanted to win glory for the Heavenly Purification Territory and avenge them. Even an outer disciple of Cebu Gakuen couldn't be compared to ordinary people, regardless of identity or status. Lin Yi, it's up to you. Don't let others look down on the heavenly purification territory. What should we do now? The faces of Murong Nan and the others turned ugly. He was no longer as high-spirited as he was in the Heavenly Sun Empire. His abject appearance could not be associated with a genius at all. They all looked at Lin Yi. However, when they thought about how Lin Yi would participate in the examination, there was still a great chance. Moreover, they didn't even have a place to stay and had nowhere to go. Let's go. It's gold. It will shine wherever it goes, Lin Yi said. Then, he led Chun Yu and the other three out of the Chun family's residence. After leaving the Shun family mansion, Lin Yi separated from the four of them. The four of them were all from third-rank clans in the Heavenly Purification Territory, and their wealth was naturally extraordinary. Since they were able to enter the Saint Martial Heavenly City, they definitely had saint stones. Furthermore, he had obtained quite a lot from the Grand Xiao World ruins. Naturally, he had the strength to stay in Saint Martial City. Blue Cloud Inn. Young master, the resources you gave me have been processed, Silent Soul said in the room of the inn. As he spoke, a crystal chip appeared in his hand. How much do you have? Lin Yi asked. In the Heavenly Purification Territory, he used spiritual crystals. When he came to the Tianlan True Domain, he used saint stones. Saint stones were billions of times more precious than spiritual crystals. One saint stone was equivalent to 100 million spiritual crystals. 23,000. Silent Soul said. Even an ordinary saint might not be able to take out more than 20,000 saint stones. Saint stones were not only a currency, but also a cultivation resource. When one's cultivation reached the half-saint realm, he could absorb the spiritual qi in the saint stones and transform it into vital essence. This was because the saint stones were condensed from spiritual qi and saint qi. However, ordinary people couldn't afford it. It's enough for a while. There's still 3 days. I have to go into seclusion in these 3 days to treat my injuries. After saying that, Lin Yi sat cross-legged and began to treat his injuries and cultivate. As for the saint stones, he didn't even look at them and let Silent Soul deal with them. There were hundreds of millions of geniuses in the Tianlan True Domain. It was not easy to join the Cebu Gakuen. He had to take it seriously. His injuries had to be treated. 3 days passed. Early in the morning, Lin Yi rushed to the Shun family mansion. The Shun family, a first-rank family. They had 16 spots. When Lin Yi arrived, he saw the geniuses of the Shun family coming out. 15 half-saints and the family head, Shun Tianpeng. Greetings, family head Shun. Lin Yi stepped forward and bowed with his fists clasped. Etiquette couldn't be lacking, even if the Shun family members looked at him with disdain. After all, Lin Yi had taken one of the Shun family spots. Okay, let's go. Shun Tianpeng was the family head of the Shun family after all. Although he felt bad about losing a spot, he couldn't take back what he said. Besides, even if all 16 of the Shun family members participated in the assessment, not many of them would be able to enter the Cebu Gakuen. As he spoke, he walked forward. You wasted a spot of the Shun family. Don't say that you have anything to do with the Shun family after you get the identity token. Shun Fei looked at Lin Yi with disdain. No matter how talented a person from a remote place was, he couldn't be compared to the geniuses of the Tianlan True Domain. Not only did he waste a spot, but he also didn't want to embarrass the Shun family. Although the other geniuses of the Shun family didn't say anything, their faces were full of disdain and disdain. They subconsciously distanced themselves from Lin Yi, as if they were lowering their status by standing close to Lin Yi. Lin Yi, owe the Shun family a favor. Lin Yi smiled and didn't take it to heart. I'll forget about this favor. Just remember what I said just now. Shun Fei said with disdain. A favor? A first-rank family of the Tianlan True Domain needed a favor from an outsider? What a joke. The Shun family mansion wasn't far from the Martial Saint Mountain. 2 hours passed in a flash. When Lin Yi and the others arrived, the Martial Saint Square at the foot of the Martial Saint Mountain was already crowded. The Marshal Saint Square spanned 100 miles from the north to the south. Heavenly humans and half-saints were everywhere, except for the center of the square. There was an empty space in the center of the square. In the center was the place for the assessment. There were more than 1 million seats around the square. The seats were in a trapezoidal shape, and one could clearly see the center of the square. At this moment, 99% of the seats were occupied. Only a few special seats were unoccupied. You guys go and wait. Shan Tianpeng took Lin Yi and the others to the Cebu Gakuan elder, who was in charge of the assessment, and handed the 16 people over to the Cebu Gakuan elder. The elder was a late-stage saint. The elder shone a light on Lin Yi and the others. Then, he let Lin Yi and the others enter the empty space in the center of the square. Lin Yi found a mysterious mark on his body, which meant that he was a participant of the assessment. So powerful, Lin Yi was shocked when he entered the center of the square. There were close to 30,000 geniuses in the center of the square, and all of them were 8th or 9th tribulation half-true saints. Moreover, these half-true saints' strength was terrifying, and they were stronger than ordinary true saints. Cebu Gakuan's minimum requirement to recruit disciples was 5th tribulation half-true saints. Lin Yi's cultivation was definitely at the bottom. With a glance, there were less than 155th tribulation half-true saints, and the rest were 8th or 9th tribulation half-true saints. However, he didn't dare to underestimate these 5th tribulation half-true saints. One had to know that those who were qualified to participate in the assessment were the top geniuses of their sects and families. The fact that a 5th tribulation half-true saint was here meant one thing. Chapter 391. Shun Lingxiao. That's Shun Lingxiao. Shen family's #1 monster. He's definitely in the top 100 among the younger generation. This time, one of the inner sect spots belongs to him. Even though the Shun family was at the bottom of the first-grade families, it was still a first-grade family. However, they were still a first-rank family, and their strength and influence were incomparably terrifying. Shun Lingxiao was the representative of the younger generation, and he had been suppressing his cultivation in order to enter the sacred martial academy. Otherwise, he would have already entered the true saint realm. Seeing Shun Lingxiao's group, countless geniuses and experts started to discuss. Still following? Seeing that Lin Yi was still with the Shun family's people after entering the assessment site, Shun Lingxiao was still with them. Shen Fei glared coldly at Lin Yi and said coldly. His tone was as though he was scolding his servant. The Shun family's participants were all peak 9th tribulation half-true saints. Only Lin Yi was a 5th tribulation half-true saint. This made Shun Fei feel a trace of humiliation, making others think that there was no one left in the Shun family. Lin Yi did not say anything and left on his own. He did not follow the Shun family's people. This scene attracted the attention of countless experts, and all of them were curious. Shun Lingxiao, he's not a member of your Shun family? Not far away, a voice sounded. Following that, a group of people walked towards the Shun family's group. The person in the lead was a young man in his mid-20s. He was a 9th tribulation half-true saint, and his powerful momentum formed a terrifying atmosphere. Zhang Tianheng, a genius like Shun Lingxiao. His cultivation was terrifying and domineering, and there were few who could match him in the same realm. Nope, Shun Lingxiao said indifferently. There was no joy or worry in his eyes, as though there was nothing that could catch his eye. Even if Lin Yi wasted one of the Shun family spots. The other Shun family's geniuses shook their heads repeatedly, afraid that others would misunderstand Lin Yi's relationship with the Shun family. 5th tribulation half-true saint. Could he be a heaven-defying monster? Zhang Tianheng sized up Lin Yi. The fact that a 5th tribulation half-true saint was participating in the test made him pay more attention to Lin Yi. However, no matter how he looked at it, the 5th tribulation half-true saint brought by the Shun family was not a monstrous genius. What was the Shun family doing? Zhang Tianheng thought to himself. One introduced by the branch. What a waste of slot. I'm not worthy of eldest brother's attention. Shun Wuxiu smiled and said, Wasting a spot? Apart from Ling Xiao, aren't the other members of the Shun family just wasting their spots? After Zhang Tianheng finished speaking, he burst into laughter. The Zhang family was much stronger than the Shun family. The Shun family had 16 spots. It would be considered good if even one person could pass the test. As for the rest, they were just here to join in the fun. Hearing Zhang Tianheng's words, the elites of the Shun family clenched their fists tightly, but they didn't dare to say anything, because they couldn't afford to offend Zhang Tianheng. Not convinced, Zhang Tianheng looked at Shun Fei and the others and said with a smile. His gaze swept over everyone and finally stopped on Shen Lingxiao. After a short pause, he retracted his gaze and walked to the side. The other monstrous geniuses of the Zhang clan also left. He was unwilling and aggrieved, but he didn't dare to say anything. This was the elites of the Shun family. They bullied the weak and feared the strong. They treated Lin Yi like a servant, but when facing Zhang Tianheng, they didn't even dare to say a word. This scene fell into the eyes of countless elites of the various clans and sections. All of them had a gloating smile on their faces. Boom! At this moment, a shocking saint aura erupted above the square. The saint aura swept across the entire square. All the elites, including the elders of the various sects and families, felt a huge pressure. There was no lack of invincible saints, but in front of this saint aura, they all felt that they were too small. Those with lower cultivation were directly suppressed. It gave off the feeling of an ant facing a dragon. The Great Sage. This was definitely the saint aura of the Great Sage. Lin Yi was secretly shocked. Soon, the unparalleled saint aura instantly disappeared. In the air, an 18 or 19-year-old girl appeared. She was like a Jiuqian goddess, peerless and otherworldly. The first goddess of Cebu Gakuan. The first demon of Cebu Gakuan, the Great Sage. Fairy Xuanji became the Great Sage at the age of 20. She is known as the first elite of Cebu Gakuan in the past 100,000 years. She is the disciple of the first palace master of Cebu Gakuan, one of the top 10 starry sky geniuses of the Divine Land, a figure who dominated an era. In the square, the girl in the air was seen. Everyone looked at her with admiration and admiration. This girl was not only beautiful, but also had unparalleled cultivation strength. She was one of the top 10 starry sky geniuses of the entire Divine Land, an existence who dominated an era. Lin Yi secretly looked at Fairy Xuanji in the air, and there was only shock in his heart. To become the Great Sage at the age of 20 was simply a mythical existence. He felt that even the demon lord in the ruins of the Great Xia dynasty might not be her match. Cebu Gakuan, the disciple recruitment assessment begins. I will preside over this assessment, Fairy Xuanji said calmly. Her crisp and sweet voice was like the sound of nature. Fairy Xuanji waved her hand across the air, and hundreds of light beams landed in the center of the square. The light beams turned into hundreds of huge light pillars, which surrounded the square and separated it from the outside world. At the same time, a light screen descended. The hundreds of light pillars merged with the light screen, forming a huge light screen. The light screen was transparent and did not affect one's vision. For the first round of the assessment, those who obtain the condensing immortal holy dew will pass. The rest will be eliminated. A jade butterfly the size of a disc appeared in Fairy Xuanji's slender hand. The jade butterfly exuded a magical light. Lin Yi felt the magical power exuded by the light, which made the true Yuan in his energy center happy. He felt refreshed. Condensing immortal holy dew. Oh my god, this round is too godly. One drop of condensing immortal holy dew can't be exchanged for even 1,000 saint stones. Condensing immortal holy dew is definitely a treasure for half-saints and saints. Of course, condensing immortal holy dew is very helpful for half-saints to break through to the saint realm. One drop of condensing immortal holy dew is equivalent to half a year of hard work. It's a pity that condensing immortal holy dew is too expensive and too rare. One drop of condensing immortal holy dew costs 1,000 saint stones. It's not something we can even dream of. Cebu Gakuin is really generous this time. Even if we can't become Cebu Gakuin's disciple, passing this round is already a great gain. Hearing about the condensing immortal holy dew, the square was in an uproar. The condensing immortal holy dew was in existence on the level of a high-grade sacred pill. Its effects were even more magical than a high-grade sacred pill. It was of great help to half-saints and saints. It was definitely a treasure in the eyes of half-saints and saints. Refining 1 drop of condensing immortal holy dew was equivalent to half a year of hard work. Although it was a little exaggerated, it also showed how magical and terrifying the condensing immortal holy dew was. At that moment, all the geniuses participating in the assessment rubbed their palms together, eager to give it a try. If they could snatch a drop of condensing immortal holy dew, they could pass this round and become stronger. Whoosh hiss, while countless geniuses were getting excited, Fairy Xuanji, who was in the air, stretched out her hand, and a green willow branch appeared in her hand. The willow branch had a jade butterfly attached to it, and she waved it gently. Suddenly, a magical starry light fell from the sky and entered the light shield. The starry light carried an unparalleled magical power, and it shone with a mesmerizing radiance. Within the radiance was the condensing immortal holy dew. Whoosh, rumble, rumble at that moment. All the geniuses participating in the assessment flew up in a frenzy toward the condensing immortal holy dew in the air, as if they had seen a peerless treasure. Where there was fighting, there was fighting. Chapter 392. The condensing immortal holy dew looks pretty good. Linny muttered to himself as he looked at the light barrier that was 3,000 feet tall and the countless specks of starlight on it. With a sweep of his powerful divine sense, Huang Xiaolong discovered that the specks of starlight were extraordinary. There were 3,000 specks of starlight, which was equivalent to 3,000 drops of condensing immortal holy dew. When he was in the cleansed heaven city, he had never heard of such a precious cultivation resource, let alone seen it. It wasn't just a precious cultivation resource. It was also an important test to enter the Cebu Gakuin. Without hesitation, Huang Xiaolong turned into a streak of light and charged towards the condensing immortal holy dew. Get lost! A 5th tribulation half-true saint was definitely the weakest among the 30,000 8th tribulation half-true saints. However, he had the wings of space. His speed was comparable to a 9th tribulation half-true saint. In fact, he was much faster than Huang Xiaolong. In the blink of an eye, Huang Xiaolong arrived in front of a drop of condensing immortal holy dew and reached out to grab it. Right at this time, a cold voice resounded. A terrifying holy aura surged towards Huang Xiaolong. At the same time, a giant palm slammed down on Lin Yi, causing the space to tremble. This palm contained the might of a 9th tribulation half-true saint, Theta Scarabii. Even if they were in the same realm, they wouldn't dare to take it head-on. Lin Yi was about to be suppressed by this palm. If he died, he would be teleported out of the light barrier. He wouldn't really die inside the light barrier. The moment he died, he would be teleported out. Heaven-destroying finger. Lin Yi looked at the giant palm indifferently. A trace of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. He casually pointed out with his finger. Boom! There was a loud explosion as a faint golden finger force pierced through the huge palm. The palm turned into smoke. The 9th tribulation half-true saint who had attacked felt his heart tremble, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, the condensing immortal holy dew was in Lin Ye's hand. There were more than 30,000 people participating in the test. There were only 3,000 drops of condensing immortal holy dew. In other words, less than 10% of the people participating in the test would pass. Every drop of condensing immortal holy dew was contested by more than a dozen people. Lin Yi had easily defeated a 9th tribulation half-true saint's attack, and this scene shocked the surrounding experts. Courting death. Hand over the condensing immortal saint dew. You overestimate yourself. die. Although they were shocked, they could not resist the temptation of the condensing immortal Saint Dew. After a brief moment of shock, the geniuses around Lin Yi unleashed their terrifying attacks, wanting to destroy Lin Yi and snatch the condensing immortal holy Dew from his hands. However, by the time they managed to react, Lin Ye's figure had already disappeared. In prison, Lin Ye's face revealed a trace of indifference as he floated 3,000 feet above the ground. He tapped lightly with his finger. Instantly, the space within a radius of 1,000 meters froze, and the entire space-time came to a standstill. One breath. It only lasted for one breath. One breath later, the sealed space was restored to its original state. However, at this moment, Lin Yi already had 13 drops of condensing immortal holy Dew in his hand. What happened? Damn it. The condensing immortal holy Dew is in his hands. A fifth tribulation, half-true, saint actually has so much condensing immortal holy Dew. It's strange, but a man's wealth is his own ruin. Let's go all out. Countless geniuses who were fighting for the condensing immortal holy Dew discovered that the condensing immortal holy Dew in front of them had disappeared without a trace. They did not even notice that the space-time had frozen. At the same time, they also noticed the condensing immortal holy Dew in Lin Ye's hand. In an instant, everyone was shocked beyond words. Apart from shock, there was also jealousy. 13 drops of condensing immortal holy Dew. Even the peak geniuses of first-grade sex could only obtain 1 drop of condensing immortal holy Dew in a year. Moreover, they had to reach the half-true saint realm before they could obtain it. As for other forces in sex, they could only dream of obtaining the condensing immortal holy Dew. Snatch. There was only one word to describe it. Snatch. In an instant, more than 100 geniuses charged towards Lin Yi. In their opinion, a mere fifth tribulation half-true saint was no match for them, even if he had some tricks up his sleeve. Snatching the condensing immortal holy Dew in Lin Ye's hand was a piece of cake. Right at this time, the first round is ended. Outside the light barrier, Fairy Xuanji's slender, jade-like hand pressed down. In an instant, an unparalleled holy aura descended. The monstrous geniuses in the center of the square were suppressed to the point where they could not even lift their heads. They could not even move their fingers. The first round ended? So fast. I have yet to obtain the condensing immortal holy Dew. Countless geniuses muttered in their hearts as disbelief and unwillingness appeared on their faces. That's right, the first round had ended. Because all the condensing immortal holy Dew in the air had disappeared, snatched away by the monstrous geniuses. Swoosh! Swoosh! As soon as Fairy Xuanji finished speaking, before the demonic geniuses present could react, a mystical power appeared in the light shield and swept through the area. Those who did not obtain the condensing immortal holy Dew were all sent out of the light barrier. In an instant, the light barrier felt empty. In the first round, the 30,000-plus geniuses had only discussed for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, less than 2,000 people were eliminated. There were only 3,000 drops of condensing immortal holy Dew among the 30,000 geniuses who took part in the assessment. On average, only 3,000 people could pass. However, some of them managed to snatch 2 or even 3 drops. Lin Yi managed to snatch more than 10 drops, but he was an exception. The first round, the number of people who passed, is 1,923. Next, you will proceed to the second round. Elimination through actual combat. In the void, Fairy Xuanji announced. Given the great sage's cultivation, her voice could be heard by all the experts in the sacred martial square. Her voice caused a commotion among the crowd. The first round was too cruel. Only a little more than 1,000 people passed out of the 30,000 people. How cruel! However, there was a huge element of luck in the first round. The second round is the real test of ability. Countless experts were discussing in low voices. The geniuses who were eliminated in the first round were filled with jealousy and indignation. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they could not become a disciple of Sibu Gakuin, They would have no fate with Cebu Gakuen for the rest of their lives. Amidst the discussion, the 1,923 people drew lots. Soon, the drawing of lots was over. There were a total of 1,923 lots, and each lot had a number on it. Number 1 will compete with number 1923. Number 2 will compete with number 1922. Number 3 will compete with number 1921, and so on. Those who have a buy will pass directly. Fairy Xuanji said unhurriedly. While she was speaking, the geniuses who drew lots looked at the jade lots in their hands helplessly. They only knew their numbers, but they did not know who their opponents were. They would only know who their opponents were during the real battle. Didn't they recruit 1,000 people? After the elimination, there will be less than 1,000 people. Fairy, is there a third round after the second round? I wonder who was so lucky to have a buy and pass directly. A question lingered in the minds of countless experts. After the elimination, there would be less than 1,000 people. Hence, someone bowed and saluted. He asked Fairy Xuanji in an extremely respectful tone. Chapter 393. After the battle ends, you will know whether there is a third stage. Fairy Xuanji said calmly. Number 961 will be given a buy. The rest of you, get ready. Every time, 100 people will compete. Those who perform well will have a chance to pass, even if they are defeated. As for those who are given a buy, after the battle ends, the defeated disciples can issue a challenge to them. You will pass if you defeat 3 people. After she finished speaking, many of the experts' expressions relaxed. It seemed like the number of participants was still 1,000. Thinking of Fairy Xuanji's words, everyone rubbed their fists and was filled with confidence. Originally, they were worried that they would be unlucky enough to meet a monstrous expert and lose. But with Fairy Xuanji's words, they had nothing to worry about. So what if they met a monstrous genius? As long as they showed an unyielding fighting spirit, they could be selected. As for those who were given a buy, they wanted to cry, but had no tears. However, as an 8th tribulation half-true saint, if he met a 9th tribulation half-true saint, there was almost no chance of him winning. The battle will begin in 10 breaths. Suddenly, Fairy Xuanji waved her hand. The hundreds of light pillars that had descended earlier immediately spread out and turned into battle stages. On each battle stage, a light screen flickered and a number appeared on it. Lin Ye's eyes swept over, and he couldn't help but frown. On the light screen, there were only numbers from 1 to 100, as well as the number of their opponents. There was no sign of his number. 100 matches will be carried out simultaneously. After one side is defeated, the loser will be eliminated, and the winner will advance. The battle stage will be moved to the next pair of competitors. Those who perform well will not be eliminated if they are defeated and can challenge those who are given a buy. After her indifferent words, Fairy Xuanji ignored the stunned crowd and formed a seal with her hands. Suddenly, a strong suction force exploded from each battle stage, pulling all the people whose numbers were displayed on the light screen up. Hiss! Fairy Xuanji is indeed powerful. With such momentum, it seems like Fairy Xuanji is not far from the peak of the great sage. Everyone was shocked as they looked at Fairy Xuanji in the air. Their eyes were filled with respect and admiration. They couldn't even muster any thoughts of resistance. Buzz! 200 figures landed on the battle stage, and a light screen appeared, separating them from each other. It was as if there were many small worlds in the arena. In the beginning, many of the experts were rather restrained. However, when they discovered that the power within the barrier of light was not something they could contend with, they let go of their hands and feet and unleashed all of their strength, fighting to their heart's content. Everyone who came here wanted to enter Cebu Gakuen, so why would they hold back? Outside the arena, the other experts were carefully observing. There were also some who were cultivating, not willing to waste any time. Lin Yi lowered his head to look at his lot number, then sat down cross-legged and took out the condensing immortal holy dew. His lot number was 808, and his opponent was number 1112. The arena could only hold 100 people, and it would take him at least an hour to refine the condensing, immortal holy dew. Lin Ye's injuries haven't completely healed yet. If he encounters ordinary ninth tribulation half-immortals, he can easily crush them with heaven exterminating finger and heavenly emperor fist. But if he encounters monstrous geniuses, he will have to put in a lot of effort. Now that it was only the second round, he didn't want to reveal too many trump cards. Buzz. Closing his eyes, the condensing immortal holy dew revolved around Lin Ye's body. The milky white liquid flowed and healed Lin Ye's injuries. At the same time, it gradually increased his aura. Some of the experts around Lin Ye were alarmed, and their eyes were filled with greed when they saw this scene. This brat's luck is really good. He actually managed to snatch so much condensing immortal holy dew with his fifth tribulation half-true saint strength. This brat is smart. While the fairy is here, he should quickly refine the condensing immortal holy dew. Otherwise, after the competition ends, there will definitely be people who will target him. Jealousy rose in the hearts of many experts, but they quickly came to their senses and sat down cross-legged to refine the condensing immortal holy dew. Whether it was to increase one's strength or to prevent others from targeting him after the competition, refining the condensing immortal holy dew in advance was always beneficial. Perhaps the condensing immortal holy dew would increase his strength and allow him to win. In an instant, everyone who hadn't started the competition started to refine the condensing immortal holy dew. However, they had neglected one thing. The condensing immortal holy dew was a treasure that even true saints would fight over. It would take a long time to refine it. If one was at the end of the competition and had refined less condensing immortal holy dew, they might be lucky enough to finish refining it. As for the others, they would be wasting such a good opportunity. Outside the light screen, the spectators were dumbfounded. Damn it, are these bastards crazy? Why are they refining the condensing immortal holy dew at this time? Isn't this a waste? Damn it, when that little bastard comes out, this old man will definitely beat him to death. Some of the experts and elders from the big families flew into a rage when they saw this scene. Fairy Xuanji, who had always been indifferent, revealed a look of disdain as she looked at the battle stage. It had to be said that this kind of random drawing really depended on luck. Some 6th tribulation and 7th tribulation half-true saints didn't even have a chance to resist when they met a 9th tribulation half-true saint. They were defeated in an instant and were sucked into the light screen. In the next moment, the light screen started to calculate the strength of the battle stage and decided whether to kick them out based on their strength. Those who were unlucky were killed in an instant. They didn't even have the chance to use their strength and were directly sent out of the light screen. This kind of scene wasn't rare. Before long, the battles on the battle stages ended. Buzz! A pillar of light flickered, and suddenly, more than 20 figures were pulled into the battle stage by a powerful force. Pooh! Those people who were still refining the condensing immortal holy dew spat out mouthfuls of blood when they were interrupted. They felt a burning pain in their internal organs. I'm going to die from anger. Damn bastard, we were tricked. This amount of time isn't enough for us to refine the condensing immortal holy dew. Bastard, you made me waste 5 drops of condensing immortal holy dew. When the competition ends, if I don't turn you into ashes, my surname isn't Peng. Those people were enraged, and they spat out mouthfuls of blood. Fortunately, the people who were competing with them had also suffered from the backlash. Only a few of them were lucky enough to obtain less condensing immortal holy dew. Their injuries weren't too serious, and they could still fight. This made them extremely depressed. There was no need for them to compete. As long as they suffered the least amount of backlash, they would be able to defeat their opponents easily. In an instant, the 10 people with more serious injuries started to resent Lin Yi in their hearts. They turned to look at Lin Yi, and they wanted to tear his flesh apart. However, they didn't think about it. Lin Yi didn't allow them to refine the condensing immortal holy dew. Who could they blame for following him? Chapter 394. Buzz! The light screen descended and teleported those who were severely injured out. It began to detect the fluctuations in the arena. However, almost all of those people were severely injured. There was no battle at all, and no fluctuations could be detected. The light screen trembled. Fairy Xuanji waved her right hand and teleported those who had won out. What's going on? Those who had won did not even have time to celebrate when they were suddenly pulled out by Fairy Xuanji. They were all stunned and looked at Fairy Xuanji in confusion. Fairy? Didn't we win? Why did you teleport us out? Fairy Xuanji said indifferently. You used tricks to win without a battle. All of you are disqualified. How could this be? The faces of those who had won were deathly pale. Their anger towards Lin Yi was like a volcano that was erupting. They did not dare to disobey Fairy Xuanji and could only direct all their anger at Lin Yi. If Lin Yi was not still in the light screen, they would have lost their patience and attacked Lin Yi directly. Those who were still confronting each other in the arena became nervous when they heard Fairy Xuanji's words. Their injuries were not very serious, so they did not trigger the light screen and were teleported out. Damn it, let's fight. Afraid that they would also be disqualified, those who had been interrupted in refining the condensing immortal holy dew did not dare to recover from their injuries. They all got up and charged towards their opponents. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, the battles continued, and no one dared to rest. However, those who were still refining the condensing immortal holy dew did not know what was happening. The spectators outside were on tenterhooks. Not long after, the battles in the arena ended one by one. The rest of the cultivators who were still refining were also forcefully pulled out by the light screen. Thus, the scene from earlier happened to those experts once again. Dozens of cultivators spat out blood. They were either disqualified because they were severely injured or disqualified because they did not fight. Only a few lucky ones did not suffer any serious injuries. Instead, they fought with their opponents. But in this way, all of their strength would be useless. It would all depend on luck. Whoever had lighter injuries would have a chance to win. Some people were happy, while others were sad. Those who were strong and had a chance to obtain a spot were eliminated because of their bad luck. They hated Lin Yi a lot. As for those who were lucky enough to win, they secretly thanked Lin Yi. Apart from the 100 people who hadn't refined the condensing immortal Saint Dew in the first round, everyone else had started to refine the condensing immortal Saint Dew under Lin Yi's influence. Therefore, when the first round of battles ended, the following battles were very dramatic and fast. One pair after another ended their competition. Soon, it was the turn of over 700 contestants. Instantly, Silent Soul, Dishy Xiao, Tian Yi, and the others who were watching from the outside were all worried in their hearts. They were afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't be able to successfully refine the condensed immortal holy dew before it was his turn, and all of them were extremely nervous. Shin family's people who didn't pass the first round were furious when they saw Lin Yi. They didn't dare to believe that Lin Yi could pass the first round. They only said that he was lucky. Now that they saw this scene, they began to mock Qin Yin, especially Shan Fei. He looked down on Lin Yi from the beginning. However, Lin Yi passed the first round and he didn't. This caused him to be incomparably angry. He felt a burning pain on his cheeks. Now that he saw that Lin Yi could be disqualified at any time, he didn't want to let go of this opportunity to mock Lin Yi. TSK, he passed the first round by luck. He actually dares to refine the condensing immortal Saint Dew. Even a saint would need at least 2 hours to refine the condensing immortal Saint Dew. This brat is just a 5th tribulation half immortal. He is truly daring. Others have friends or juniors who followed Lin Yi and were eliminated. Some of them are still refining and don't have any good impression of Lin Yi. So they all began to mock him. This brat is too savage. It's not a problem if he wants to die, but he has cheated so many people. Wait until the end of the test. We must teach him a good lesson. Some of the elders of the various forces had gloomy eyes, and they were ready to take action against Lin Yi. Of course, this was based on the fact that Lin Yi couldn't join the Cebu Gakuen. If Lin Yi passed the test, even if he only became an outer disciple of the Cebu Gakuen, They wouldn't dare to make a move against Lin Yi. Cebu Gakuin wasn't something they could go against. I'm sure that this brat won't be able to refine the condensing immortal Saint Dew. He'll be kicked out in a while. F***CK. He messed up the situation this time. If it wasn't for this bastard, how could I, a 9th tribulation half-true saint, lose to a 7th tribulation half-true saint? When he comes out, I swear that I won't be a human if I don't kill him. Some of the experts who had failed to refine the condensing immortal holy dew and were chased out were filled with resentment towards Lin Yi, and they glared hatefully at Lin Yi. However, as soon as they finished speaking, their eyes widened and they revealed looks of shock. No, how is this possible? Heavens, this must be an illusion. Everyone present was shocked. Even Shun Fei and the others were dumbfounded on the spot. High in the sky, the goddess-like fairy Xuanji also revealed a shocked expression as she looked at Lin Yi in confusion. At this time, resplendent light bloomed around Lin Yi's body as he absorbed all the condensing immortal holy dew into his body, nourishing his meridians. In less than 15 minutes, Lin Yi had refined 13 drops of condensing immortal holy dew with his mere 5th tribulation half-true saint strength. Everyone was shocked, and the corners of their mouths twitched. They couldn't believe their eyes. This didn't make sense at all. In their knowledge, even a true saint would find it hard to refine 15 drops of condensing immortal holy dew in 15 minutes. 13 drops of condensing immortal holy dew, and Lin Yi had only used 15 minutes to refine them. Didn't that mean that Lin Yi's strength was comparable to a true saint? What they didn't know was that Lin Yi's divine sense had already reached the true saint realm. If it wasn't for his injuries, he would have refined all the condensing immortal holy dew in less than 15 minutes. Interesting, a slight ripple appeared in Fairy Xuanji's eyes, and she looked at the rest of the participants coldly. Impossible. This kid is just a 5th tribulation half-true saint. How can his refining speed be so fast? But with Fairy Xuanji here, no one can cheat. How'd he do it? For a time, other than those who were hostile to Lin Yi, the rest of the people felt admiration in their hearts. Not to mention other things. The fact that he dared to refine the condensing immortal holy dew before an important battle stage was enough to earn their respect. Slowly getting up, Lin Yi sensed the curious and resentful gazes on him, and he couldn't help but frown. He turned around and looked at the battle stage. Only ants and weaklings would blame others. Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to lower himself to their level. Of course, when he saw so many people refining the condensing immortal holy dew, he was still shocked. He hadn't expected that so many people would follow the trend. These fellows are simply courting death. Shaking his head slightly, Lin Yi no longer paid attention to them and turned his attention to the battle stage. Chapter 395. The battle on the stage was rather comical. Almost everyone was severely injured and forced to attack. They did not even use their full strength to attack each other. Instead, they scattered their strength to every corner of the stage so that they could avoid detection from the light screen. One had to admit that the current battle scene was too comical. The onlookers' expressions became strange, and if they were not careful, they would burst out laughing. Lin Yi was speechless. He did not expect that refining the condensing immortal holy dew would lead to so many problems. However, this was good. His next opponent would definitely suffer from the backlash, and he would be able to pass the second round easily. Ridiculous. How can such a situation occur in Cebu Gakuin's assessment? This is ridiculous. The elders of the various forces were livid. None of them had expected that the battle that was supposed to be a battle of strength would turn out like this. What made them even more depressed was that the geniuses and monsters in their families were unlucky enough to suffer from the backlash and were eliminated. The elders of the various forces looked at each other and shouted as they gradually approached Fairy Xuanji. Fairy, this competition is too ridiculous. Why don't we start the second round? Let them have a fair and just duel. That's right, Fairy Xuanji. How can the quota that was obtained by luck be counted? Many of them are only 7th tribulation half-true saints. They passed the assessment by luck, and their talents are not strong. Cebu Gakuin is wasting the quota by recruiting them. The elders of the various forces spoke in unison as they looked at Fairy Xuanji with hope. At this moment, Fairy Xuanji was the strongest and represented Cebu Gakuin. She had the right to decide the outcome of the assessment. However, the alliance of the various forces was not to be underestimated. Seeing that Fairy Xuanji was a woman, they thought of joining forces to pressure her, hoping that the assessment would be redone. Previously, the monsters and geniuses and their families had snatched too much condensing immortal holy dew. As a result, the backlash was severe and they were disqualified. Only a few monsters were lucky enough to be in the first batch to pass the second round. However, they wanted more people to enter Cebu Gakuin. Therefore, they did not want to miss the opportunity to force her to abdicate. More than a dozen figures stood together, and holy aura filled the air as they suppressed Fairy Xuanji. Oomph. However, before the Saint Aura could land, Fairy Xuanji scoffed and her eyes turned cold. In an instant, a biting cold air mixed with a powerful Saint Aura fell from the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The dozen figures were like kites with their strings cut as they were sent flying by the impact. As soon as he landed on the ground, he coughed up blood and felt a burning pain in his internal organs. Instantly, the dozen or so saints were extremely terrified. They had originally thought that Fairy Xuanji was young and only had a cultivation base, so the strength that she could unleash was not considered too strong. But in this exchange, they instantly felt Fairy Xuanji's true power. The Great Sage, and it was no ordinary Great Sage. Luck is also a form of strength, Fairy Xuanji said indifferently. If you spout any more nonsense, all the disciples of your respective forces will be disqualified. From the beginning to the end, Fairy Xuanji did not even look at them. She was extremely cold and did not care about them at all. This sigh. Hearing this, the elders could only sigh helplessly and place their hopes on the disciples who passed the second round. Some forces were too unlucky. The people who were sent in were either still refining the condensing immortal holy dew and were ready to try their luck, or they had already been kicked out and lost their qualifications. This made them despair. Losing the qualifications to enter Cebu Gakuin meant that their forces would face a harsh winter for the next 10 years, and their strength would decline instead of rising. If they were unlucky, they might even be annihilated. Buzz! Another dramatic battle ended on the stage. This time, the light screen fell directly on Lin Yi and pulled him onto the stage. It's that brat's turn. Damn bastard. So what if he can refine the condensing immortal holy dew? He's just a 5th tribulation half-true saint. As long as he meets a 9th tribulation half-true saint, even if he's injured, he can crush you with a finger. Bastard, he must lose. Seeing that Lin Yi was on the stage, everyone became excited. They gritted their teeth and hoped that Lin Yi would lose. Only Dishi Xiao, Tian Yi, Silent Soul, and the others hoped that Lin Yi would win, and they would be able to hold their heads high. A 9th tribulation half-true saint. God bless. This bastard's opponent must be a 9th tribulation half-true saint. I hope that there's a monstrous genius who can be his opponent. Beat this bastard to a pulp. Everyone prayed in their hearts, and they were just short of burning incense and praying to Buddha. Buzz. While everyone was praying, another light screen fell, and a figure was revealed. Pooh! The moment the figure appeared, his body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned deathly pale. In the next moment, the energy in his body surged like a raging sea, and he actually suppressed the injuries from refining the condensing immortal holy dew. A peak 9th tribulation half-true saint. Haha, this is great. That's the Zhang family's genius, Zhang Ruoxu. Other than Zhang Tianheng, he's the strongest. Someone recognized the silhouette and shouted out. In an instant, everyone was overjoyed and a sinister smile appeared on their faces. They were anticipating the scene of Lin Yi being beaten to a pulp. The Zhang family was powerful, and Zhang Tianheng was even more powerful. Zhang Ruoxu was the second strongest person in the Zhang family, and no one doubted Zhang Ruoxu's strength. Hey! Zhang Ruoxu spat out a mouthful of blood, and he raised his head to look at Lin Yi. His eyes were filled with rage. "It's you, you bastard. You purposely refined the condensing immortal holy dew and caused us to suffer the backlash. Damn it!" Zhang Ruoxu wasn't stupid, and he quickly understood why he was suffering from the backlash. In an instant, he hated Lin Yi. He thought that Lin Yi was trying to frame them. "Bastard, don't think that you can defeat me just because you caused us to suffer the backlash." In his rage, Zhang Ruoxu didn't realize that Lin Yi wasn't suffering from the backlash. He glared at Lin Yi and walked forward step by step. Boom! Violent energy surged like a hurricane and gathered behind Zhang Ruoxu. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the next instant, a strong gust of wind blew towards Lin Yi. The wind was strong and strong. Even though he was several feet away, Lin Yi could still feel the pain coming from his skin. One had to admit that Zhang Ruoxu wasn't a weakling. Even if he was injured by the backlash, an ordinary Ninth Tribulation half-true saint wouldn't be a match for him. It was a pity that his opponent was Lin Yi. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi didn't even use his divine sense. He merely raised his index finger and pointed it in front of him. Buzz! In an instant, the shadow of a huge index finger appeared, and it was as if a god had descended. Boundless holy aura burst out and compressed all the hurricanes and strong winds together. Heaven-destroying finger. Chapter 396. Holy Aura. How is this possible? As the heavenly exterminating finger landed on Zhang Ruoxu, the powerful holy aura shattered the wind and dissipated it completely. In the next moment, the heavenly exterminating finger continued to land on Zhang Ruoxu. However, Zhang Ruoxu was so shocked by the holy aura that he did not notice the heavenly exterminating finger's attack. Unbelievable! Holy aura was exclusive to saints. If one was not a saint, no matter how talented a peak Nine Tribulation half-true saint was, they would not be able to display holy aura. Therefore, when he felt the holy aura, he felt as though he was struck by lightning. Zhang Ruoxu could feel the holy aura, but the others could not. In an instant, everyone who saw this scene was puzzled. They could only see Lin Yi raising his finger, and a huge shadow of his index finger destroyed Zhang Ruoxu's attack and continued to land on Zhang Ruoxu. Zhang Ruoxu, who they had thought highly of, was stunned on the spot. He did not resist at all. This surprised them and made them even more curious. Damn it, what is going on? Zhang Ruoxu is the Zhang family's number 2 genius. How could his attack be so easily neutralized? Could it be that his injuries are too serious? The puzzled crowd could only attribute it to Zhang Ruoxu's injuries. Zhang Tianheng could not help but frown when he saw this scene. Initially, he was full of confidence in Zhang Ruoxu, but now his heart was filled with an ominous feeling. What is Zhang Ruoxu doing? Why isn't he dodging? Zhang Tianheng was extremely dissatisfied. Lin Yi came with the Shun family, and he was a weak Fifth Tribulation half-true saint. If Zhang Ruoxu was defeated, he would definitely be mocked by the Shun family. Ha! All of a sudden, Shun Lingxiao showed up and said with a cold laugh, "Zhang Tianheng, it seems like the people of your Zhang clan are nothing special." Humph. Zhang Tianheng snorted and ignored Shun Lingxiao. This made Shun Lingxiao laugh maniacally. Zhang Tianheng had been mocking the Shun family in the past, and this time he finally found the opportunity to mock them back. Before Zhang Tianheng could reply, Zhang Ruoxu, who was in a daze, finally regained his senses. "Not good," Zhang Ruoxu exclaimed. He felt the powerful, saintly might tearing at his skin like countless beams of sharp sword qi. Gritting his teeth, Zhang Ruoxu did not dare to hold back. He retreated quickly and raised his right hand. A blue light appeared. The gentle aura continued to flow around Zhang Ruoxu. The water territory appeared and revolved around Zhang Ruoxu's right hand, forming a blue light shield. At the same time, 2 pairs of gauntlets appeared on Zhang Ruoxu's hands, and a powerful aura burst out. High-grade 10,000 inscriptions sacred artifact. The might of the sacred artifact mixed with the gentle water domain spun rapidly, causing even space to distort. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi did not put him in his eyes. No matter how powerful a divine artifact was, it was still an inanimate object. Zhang Ruoxu's field domain was too weak to resist it. Heaven-destroying finger strike. With a light shout, the speed of the heaven-destroying finger's descent suddenly increased. Under everyone's horrified gazes, it crashed into the blue light shield with a loud bang. Clang! The heaven-destroying finger collided with the blue light shield. In the next moment, the shadow of the heaven-destroying finger gradually collapsed. Zhang Ruoxu's entire body stiffened, and he stopped in the air. Ha ha ha! Zhang Ruoxu is indeed the second supreme talent of the Zhang family. Even though he's severely injured, he can still resist that guy's attack. That guy is such a jerk. We must defeat him so that he can't enter Cebu Gakuen. Seeing this, everyone could not help but laugh out loud. They were all very pleased with themselves. As long as Lin Yi could not enter Cebu Gakuen, they had all sorts of ways to torture Lin Yi. However, just as they finished laughing, a crisp sound came through the light shield and clearly reached their ears. Raising his head to take a look, the faces of those who were laughing heartily earlier immediately turned extremely ugly. In front of Zhang Ruoxu, the blue light shield shattered into pieces like glass and exploded. As for the high-grade 10,000 inscriptions sacred artifact in his right hand, it was also badly damaged. Pooh! Zhang Ruoxu's body trembled, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He could feel a violent energy flowing through his meridians, and his entire body became extremely weak. This made Zhang Ruoxu despair. He could not believe that a fifth tribulation half-true saint could break his defense with a single finger. No, this can't be real. His body trembled violently, and Zhang Ruoxu gritted his teeth. His eyes were bloodshot. I'm a member of the Zhang family. How can I be defeated by the Shun family? You're just someone recommended by a branch of the Shun family. You're not Shunling Xiao. I can't lose. I can't embarrass the Zhang family. Zhang Ruoxu's eyes were bloodshot, and the anger in his heart exploded. With a wave of his hand, a full set of armor appeared on his body. Buzz! Yellow rays of light appeared, and a thick and sturdy aura filled the air. The yellow earth swept out like waves, protecting Zhang Ruoxu. The 18,000 Dao earth domains were like a wall of imperial guards, protecting Zhang Ruoxu. One had to admit that Zhang Ruoxu was also a monster. Ordinary people only had a few thousand Dao earth domains, but he had 18,000 Dao earth domains with outstanding defensive capabilities. Even if Shun Ling Xiao and Zhang Tianhang attacked, they would not be able to defeat Zhang Ruoxu in a short time. They could only exhaust his Dao earth domains with endless energy. Rumble. The entire set of supreme grade 10,000 pattern saint artifact armor rumbled and manifested a lion. It roared and looked at Lin Yi with eyes filled with savagery. This time, Zhang Ruoxu did not hold back. He was going to use all his strength to defeat Lin Yi and clear his name. Interesting. Feeling the 18,000 Dao earth domains, Lin Yi took a step forward and waved his hands. In the next moment, his body was like a volcano that was about to erupt, and it contained an extremely powerful energy. It was as if he could change the color of heaven and earth as long as he punched out. Heya! Roar the majestic lion. Burial of the thick earth. Die! 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 Zhang Ruoxu suddenly jumped up, and the majestic lion on his armor flew out from his chest. It roared and ran towards Lin Yi. The Dao Earth domain was heavy, and it pressed down on Lin Yi. At the same time, the fist radiance whistled, and it was mixed with violent energy as it attacked Lin Yi. Celestial Emperor's Fist. Level 6. In a cold voice, Lin Yi punched out. His movements were not flashy, but they were filled with power. It was as if the entire world was going to shatter with this punch. Rumble. A strong wind suddenly surged, and it swept out with an aura that could sweep across heaven and earth. Rumble, roar, bang. Chapter 397. Roar. The lion's roar shook the heavens, and the sound waves were extremely powerful. Even the sixth level of the Heavenly Emperor Fist paused for a moment. In the next moment, the lion's shadow was already in front of the fist, and its sharp claws descended. At the same time, the thick earth burial arrived. The dense earth domain was like an endless river, and it surged forward and enveloped the fist. Rumble. In the next moment, loud explosions rang out continuously. Shockwaves after shockwaves rushed out one after another, rippling out in all directions. Fortunately, the light barrier around the stage was created by the Great Sage, and it wasn't affected by the shockwaves. Damn it! Zhang Ruoxu's expression changed slightly when he saw that the Earth Realm and the Lion Shadow were still unable to suppress Lin Yi. Disbelief filled his face. He was a ninth tribulation half-true saint, and he could even fight Zhang Tianheng. How could he not be able to suppress a fifth tribulation half-true saint? I don't believe that a mere fifth tribulation half-true saint can overturn the heavens. Gritting his teeth, Zhang Ruoxu unleashed all the energy in his body. His hair stood on end, and energy surged into the earth domain. Boom! In an instant, the earth domain was formed, and it seemed as if it was going to seal the Heavenly Emperor Fist. Explode. Noticing this, Lin Yi bellowed, and the sixth level of the Heavenly Emperor Fist exploded. Thunder rumbled, and the wind for the fist swept out in all directions. Bang! 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 Kacha! Kacha! Amidst the loud explosions, the lion's body stiffened, and the earth domain stopped moving. It was suspended in the air. A crisp sound rang in the air, and it sounded like glass shattering. Pooh! Zhang Ruoxu felt a sweet taste in his throat, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. In the next moment, a searing pain shot through his organs. Bang! The lion in the sky, as well as the 18,000 Dao Earth domain, suddenly shattered in all directions like a fairy scattering flowers. Hiss! Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. Could this guy be a dark horse? With the strength of a fifth tribulation half-true saint, he can actually fight Zhang Ruoxu head-on. This guy might be a monster. It seems like this assessment is going to be interesting. I wonder if this dark horse will be able to shake Zhang Tianheng and the others' positions. Everyone was shocked, and they looked at Lin Yi in anticipation of the battle between Lin Yi and Zhang Tianheng. Only the disciples of the Zhang and Shun families were enraged. They couldn't wait for Lin Yi to be defeated and get off the stage. It was the same for Zhang Ruoxu. Compared to the pain in his body, the pain in his heart was even greater. He couldn't believe that he had lost to a fifth tribulation half-true saint. Even if he lost, why did he lose to the Shun clan? Zhang Ruoxu could already imagine how others would humiliate him in the future. I can't. TII. Thinking of this possibility, Zhang Ruoxu's entire body began to tremble. His eyes were bloodshot and shone with a demonic light. RR. In the next moment, the energy in his body boiled, and his aura became like that of a fiend god. Is Zhang Ruoxu going all out? This looks like the heavenly taboo state. Only heaven-defying geniuses can enter the heavenly taboo state. It can increase one's strength to the greatest extent. The onlookers exclaimed in shock. In an instant, everyone turned to look at Zhang Ruoxu. That's right. This is the heavenly taboo state. Hee. It seems like the outcome of this battle is still uncertain. Interesting. A dark horse defeated Zhang Ruoxu, but he entered the heavenly taboo state. That person must be frustrated. Ha ha ha. I knew it. Zhang Ruoxu is the number 2 genius of the Zhang family. How can he be defeated by an ant? As Zhang Ruoxu's aura became more and more intense, the balance in everyone's hearts once again tilted towards Zhang Ruoxu. This guy is really hard to deal with. Frowning his brows, Lin Yi was surprised. He didn't expect that a disciple of the Zhang clan would be able to display such potential. However, this was the end of it. If Lin Yi had not refined the condensing celestial dew, he would have a hard time dealing with Zhang Ruoxu in the heavenly taboo state. However, after recovering his strength, Lin Yi could use more of his divine thought. He did not need Zhang Ruoxu anymore. The first time a person entered the heavenly taboo state, he would need more than 10 breaths to get used to it. Lin Yi noticed that Zhang Ruoxu was in a daze. He understood this. The next moment, his divine thought turned into a sharp knife and pierced into Zhang Ruoxu's head. Zhang Ruoxu was still getting used to the heavenly taboo state. His mind was hit and he fainted. The energy within his body had also completely dissipated like a receding tide. Rumble. At the same time, the remaining strength of the Celestial Emperor's fist hit Zhang Ruoxu's body and sent him flying. Bam! Zhang Ruoxu was defenseless. How could he withstand the power of the Celestial Emperor's fist? His skin cracked and blood flowed out. He crashed heavily into the light screen. Wong. The light screen surged and Zhang Ruoxu's figure was sent out. Zhang Ruoxu eliminated. I hiss. How did this happen? He was sent out the moment he entered the heavenly taboo state. Dark Horse. This kid dares to participate in the assessment with a fifth tribulation, half-true saint cultivation. He must be confident. I wonder which family this kid is from. Everyone was stunned. Their mouths were agape as they stared at Lin Yi, who was standing on the stage with his hands behind his back, especially those from the Shun clan and the Zhang clan. Their cheeks were burning with pain. Previously, they had called him a waste of a slot. Now, he had defeated Zhang Ruoxu, who was in the limelight, and secured a slot for himself. Compared to them, the difference was like heaven and earth. Wong. Number 808 wins. The light pillar surged, and very quickly, Lin Yi was also teleported out. Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. Sibu Gakuin had recruited a total of 1,000 disciples. Only about 800 of them could pass the second round. Compared to him, it was much easier for him to pass the second round. One had to admit that Zhang Ruoxu was strong. If he had not met Lin Yi, he would have secured a spot for himself. Unfortunately, he was unlucky and could only be eliminated. After the battle ended, the next group's battle began. However, the rest of the participants were still refining the condensing immortal holy dew. The next group was also severely injured. The previous scene repeated itself. In an instant, the expressions of the surrounding crowd became strange. Initially, they wanted to watch the battles between the top disciples and learn from them. However, other than the battle between Zhang Ruoxu and Lin Yi, the rest of the participants were either too weak or severely injured. They cannot compete at all. Weirdo. This year's assessment is too strange. Everyone looked at Fairy Xuanji with a strange expression. Chapter 398. Those who passed the test were sent to the same place. There weren't many people. As soon as Lin Yi was sent to the same place, Shun Lingxiao and Zhang Tianheng turned to look at him. Kid, you did well. Shun Lingxiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. Being able to eliminate the Zhang family's people is not a disgrace to our Shun family's name and quota. In this world where the strong were respected, as long as you had the strength, no one would dare to look down on you. Initially, Shun Lingxiao was disdainful of Lin Yi because he thought that Lin Yi would only waste the Shun family's quota. Now that he saw that Lin Yi was strong enough to defeat Zhang Ruoxu and destroy the Zhang family's prestige, he was naturally happy. Even his attitude towards Lin Yi had improved. Zhang Tianheng was gloomy as he snorted. What's so great about defeating Zhang Ruoxu while he was injured? With his fifth tribulation half-true saint cultivation, he will suffer in Sibu Gakuin. Ha! At least he's better than Zhang Ruoxu. He can't even enter Sibu Gakuin. Shun Lingxiao shrugged his shoulders and swept his gaze across the crowd. He sneered. It seems like only one person from your Zhang family passed the test this year. Just wait and see. Zhang Tianheng's eyes turned cold as he glared at Shun Lingxiao. Then, he turned around and walked away. They were still in the middle of the test, so they didn't dare to act recklessly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the only ones who would be punished. They might even implicate the families behind them. Not bad, kid, you did well. After Zhang Tianheng left, Shun Lingxiao approached Lin Yi and patted his shoulder. In an instant, a pure energy flowed through Lin Ye's shoulder and entered his body. Sensing this, Lin Ye's shoulder shook, and an invisible sword intent suddenly appeared, completely crushing the power. Oomph! Shun Lingxiao snorted and looked at Lin Yi in surprise. At first, he did not pay attention to Lin Ye's strength. Even when Lin Yi defeated Zhang Ruoxu, he only thought that Lin Yi was lucky. However, this time, he felt the pure sword essence. The expression in Shun Lingxiao's eyes gradually turned serious. Suddenly, he laughed and said, "Interesting. You are much stronger than those trash. Even if Zhang Ruoxu wasn't injured, he wouldn't be your match. It's worth it to give the Shun family's quota to you. If they have enough cultivation resources, they won't necessarily be bad." Lin Yi said indifferently, "This time, I owe your Shun family a favor." Oh, hearing this, Shun Lingxiao could not help but raise his eyebrows. Normally, if one borrowed a family's quota, it meant that one was tied to that family. Originally, he did not want to let trash get the quota, so he made things difficult for Lin Yi and the rest. Now that he saw how strong Lin Yi was, he had other thoughts. He did not expect that Lin Yi would not be tied to the Shin family. He only owed them a favor. In an instant, Shun Lingxiao's face darkened again. He said in a low voice, "Young man, the Shun family is a first-rank family. Many people want to join us, but they don't want to. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Even if you enter Cebu Gakuen without the support of the Shun family, it will be difficult for you to soar." After saying this, Shun Lingxiao ignored Lin Yi and turned to leave. He looked quite arrogant. TSK, is a first-rank family that great? Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi shook his head slightly. He did not take Shun Lingxiao's words to heart. With the help of the Universe Pagoda and the Ninefold Space, it would be strange if he could not rise in Cebu Gakuen. After Shun Lingxiao and Zhang Tianheng left, one after another, people came to interact with Lin Yi and make friends with him. This was to prepare for their future life in Cebu Gakuen. At the same time, on the screen, the 100 arenas were still going on. From time to time, there were lucky people with light injuries who passed the assessment and were teleported in. Then they all thanked Lin Yi. If it were not for Lin Yi, the rest would not have been able to refine the condensing immortal holy dew, and they would not have been able to pass the assessment by luck. Lin Yi felt helpless about this. He did not expect that his unintentional action would cause such a big problem. If most of the people who were not strong enough were recruited in this assessment, Fairy Xuanji would probably want to kill him. Of course, he also gained the friendship of many people. Although they were not very strong, it was hard to say what kind of role they could play. Time passed quietly. After 15 minutes, all the battles ended. Because most of the people were severely injured, they could not fight on the stage. No fluctuations were detected, and 2 people were disqualified. Therefore, only a mere 700 people passed the assessment in the end. There were still 300 people short of the 1,000 people who were recruited. After counting the number of people, Fairy Xuanji, who had always been cold, sized up Lin Yi with a strange look in her eyes. Fairy Xuanji had thought of many scenarios, but she did not expect that the one who disrupted her plans would be a 5th tribulation half-true saint. After the second round ended, all the participants raised their heads and looked at Fairy Xuanji. The disciples who failed due to injuries had strange expressions on their faces. They were incomparably ashamed, and they did not even dare to look at their friends and family. It was too embarrassing. It was fine if they were not strong enough, but they were actually schemed against and were eliminated due to bad luck. It was too embarrassing. After a long time, Fairy Xuanji sized up the crowd and said indifferently, "Those who performed well but were still defeated and injured, I will give you another chance. Everyone, a battle royale. The last 300 people will be considered to have passed the assessment. As a price, the opportunity to challenge an empty spot will be canceled. The disciple who did not challenge will directly advance to the next round. Wow. As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd went into an uproar. Originally, they thought that the assessment was over and they could only leave with their tails between their legs. Who would have thought that Fairy Xuanji would give them another chance? Ha ha! Fairy Xuanji, good job. Thank you, Fairy Xuanji. Everyone was extremely excited, especially those who were unlucky. They did not even have time to thank Fairy Xuanji. They hurriedly sat down cross-legged and quickly healed their injuries. In a battle royale with hundreds of people, if they could not recover their strength, they would not be able to stand out. For a moment, the crowd quieted down. Everyone who passed the assessment turned to look at Lin Yi. Their expressions were complicated and full of admiration. Lin Yi, a person who single-handedly disrupted the great sage's plan. If news of this spread, even in Cebu Gakuen, it would become a legend. Lin Yi did not care about this and continued to cultivate in peace to recover his strength. Chapter 399. Fairy Xuanji stood alone in the air, looking at the crowd with indifference. The battle royale is about to begin. Everyone get ready. Suddenly, Fairy Xuanji waved her right hand, and the hundreds of light pillars quickly merged together to form a huge arena. At the same time, nearly 1,000 people were attracted by the light pillars and flew up. Among the 1,000 people, most of them were disciples who had failed the second round. Some of them were unlucky in the first round and were unable to snatch the condensing immortal saint due from the monstrous geniuses. Most of the disciples from the Shun and Zhang families were among them. This made them extremely excited. They all rubbed their fists and prepared for battle. After falling into the circle, before anyone could react, some of the people who were prepared in advance had already attacked. Boom, boom, boom. Fierce attacks came one after another. Many people were sent flying out the moment they landed on the arena. They were seriously injured and were eliminated once again. It had to be said that their luck was really terrible. However, their elimination had awakened the others. As soon as those people landed on the ground, they became vigilant and erupted with their strongest strength. A fierce battle was about to break out. In an instant, the entire arena was filled with shock waves from the battle. Each person was dealing with several people. They would surround one person and then change directions to surround another person. TSK. The battle royale is more entertaining. The spectators were watching with interest and kept nodding their heads. Although the battle royale depended on luck, the most important thing was still strength. If one was not strong enough, they would still be sent out. Moreover, there were no rules in the battle royale. It was easy to fall into danger. Everyone would give it their all. It was indeed entertaining. Even those who had already passed the test started to watch it. Shun Ling Xiao and Zhang Tianheng were paying attention to the disciples from their families. If the Shun and Zhang families happened to meet, they would be at each other's throats and constantly mock each other. It had to be said that the conflict between the Shun and Zhang families was especially intense. When the disciples from the two families met, their eyes turned red. They did not care about the others and directly attacked each other. However, the Zhang family's luck was too bad. Every time they met, the Shen family's disciples were coincidentally stronger and defeated the Zhang family's disciples. At the same time, as the number of people gradually decreased, the chaotic battle was no longer as intense as before. Some people had already begun to form cliques to deal with the family forces. Forces like the Shen family, Zhang family, and Shun family had nearly 10 people participating in the assessment. If they continued to fight on their own, in the end, they would only be making a wedding dress for those people from the larger forces. Those who were able to participate in the assessment were no fools. Therefore, after the initial chaotic battle, the number of people gradually stabilized. Those who did not belong to any faction also joined together and formed a temporary group to fight against the people from the other factions. The fight between the two of them had evolved into a team fight. Under such circumstances, the battles weren't as frequent as before, but the intensity of the battles didn't decrease at all. The leaders of the various factions became nervous. Very quickly, the Shun family and Zhang family, who had the deepest enmity with each other, clashed violently. Over 20 people fought together, and the shockwaves of the battle even spread throughout the entire arena. Lion's roar, burial of the earth. All of a sudden, a piercing voice rang in the air, and a lion's shadow appeared and pressed down on the arena. The earth domain that covered the entire sky fell, and it gave people a suffocating feeling. In an instant, the faces of the Shun family members were filled with fear. After resting for a long time, Zhang Ruox's injuries had mostly healed. When he thought about how the Shun family had snatched his spot, the anger in his heart surged. When he unleashed his full strength, his strength was actually much stronger than before. Rumble. As the piercing aura descended, everyone on the stage could feel the powerful energy. Their faces turned cold, and they began to treat Zhang Ruoxu as their greatest enemy. Everyone else could feel it, let alone the people from the Shun family. In an instant, the lion brandished its sharp claws, and it jumped into the group of people from the Shun family like a peerless, ferocious beast. The burial of the earth fell, and it pressed down on their bodies. Zhang Ruoxu, as a 9th tribulation half-true saint, you actually lost to a 5th tribulation half-true saint. You don't live up to your reputation. Suddenly, a loud shout rang in the air. Zhang Ruoxu's face darkened, and the blood-red light in his eyes intensified. To him, losing to Lin Yi was a humiliation. Now that someone had mentioned it, it had crossed his bottom line. Heya, I'll defeat you again today. Shun Fei shouted and leaped out. He held the sword with both hands and raised it high. A giant sword shadow appeared behind his back. Shun Fei had always looked down on Lin Yi, and he thought that his strength was much stronger than Lin Yi. Therefore, when he saw Lin Yi defeating Zhang Ruoxu, he thought that Zhang Ruoxu would be defeated even if he had rested for a short while because of his injuries. Therefore, Shun Fei dared to make a move against Zhang Ruoxu. Buzz! Sharp sword Qi soared to the sky, and the pressure on the other Shun family's disciples lessened. Senior brother Shun Fei is mighty. Sensing this, the rest of the disciples all cheered out in excitement and looked at Shun Fei with hopeful eyes. At this moment, there were only 6 people left in the Zhang family. As long as Zhang Ruoxu was eliminated, the other 5 would not be able to defeat the 10 of them. At that time, they might be able to pass the assessment. He. Shun Fei, since you want to die, come and try. Zhang Ruoxu squinted his eyes, and the blood-red light in his eyes surged again. Once again, Zhang Ruoxu entered the Heaven Seal. As he had successfully used the Heaven Seal previously, he did not get used to it this time. The blood in Zhang Ruoxu's body surged, and his strength was enhanced and strengthened. However, this time, Zhang Ruoxu did not unleash all of his strength. Instead, he suppressed his strength and prepared to defeat Shun Fei this time. Previously, he had been defeated by the Shun family. This time, he wanted to take revenge. Zhang Ruoxu suppressed his strength perfectly. No one in the fighting ring noticed the change in his strength. Only the elites outside the fighting ring noticed it, but they could not alert the people in the fighting ring. When Shun Fei saw that Zhang Ruoxu's aura was getting weaker, he thought that Zhang Ruoxu was severely injured. He laughed hysterically, and his heart was filled with excitement. Zhang Ruoxu was the 2nd supreme talent of the Zhang family. If he could defeat Zhang Ruoxu, his status in the Shun family would skyrocket. By then, he would have more resources at his disposal. At this point, Shun Fei shouted softly, and the sword territory appeared. A total of 11,000 illusory sword shadows gathered in the air. Chapter 401. The sword Qi vibrated, and the sword intent was sharper than a needle. It felt as though it was piercing Zhang Ruoxu's skin. Even though Zhang Ruoxu had entered the heaven taboo state and his body was strengthened, he could still feel the pain. Since Shun Fei dared to make a move, it meant that he was not weak. Of course, Shun Fei's attack could only make Zhang Ruoxu feel pain. If they really fought, Shun Fei would definitely be the one to lose. The difference in strength between the two of them was too big, let alone Zhang Ruoxu, who had entered the heaven taboo state. Wong Wong Wong. Sword Chi stood in great numbers, whistling and spinning, looking very majestic. In an instant, everyone in the Shun family cheered for Shun Fei. When the Zhang family saw Zhang Ruoxu being pushed back, they felt disappointed. Even their attacks became weaker. In an instant, the Shun family began to counterattack. Ha ha! Shun Fei was overjoyed when he saw this. He laughed loudly, thinking that victory was in his hands. Holding the sword with both hands, he slashed downwards. Blazing light sword. As his crisp voice sounded, the sword shadows in the sky emitted a fiery red light. It was as if they were on fire. More than 10,000 rays of sword chi were ignited. Together with the scorching flames, the sharp sword chi rushed towards Zhang Ruoxu. What a powerful force! Senior brother Shun Fei couldn't combine the flames and sword chi the last time. I didn't expect it to be so powerful this time. Everyone in the battle stage was shocked when they felt the scorching flames. They could feel the power of this move. It was powerful even among the ninth tribulation half-true saints. Not many people had the confidence to take it head-on. Outside the battle stage, the Shun family members were also shocked. They looked at Shun Fei in a new light. Bang! However, before the flaming sword chi could land on Zhang Ruoxu, the earth domain pressed down and squeezed all the flaming sword chi together. Wong Wong Wong. Flames collided with flames, and the sword chi continued to collide. In an instant, the entire space became unstable. Huh? Still trying to resist? Shun Fei sneered. His hands formed a seal, and the flames burned fiercely. The sword chi became more intense. Shun Fei's face was indifferent. He stared at Zhang Ruoxu like a grim reaper. Kikik. Suddenly, Zhang Ruoxu raised his eyes. The armor on his body shone with a dazzling light again. Glancing at Shun Fei, Zhang Ruoxu sneered and said, "Kid, do you really think you could defeat me?" "Shun Fei, you're just a clown. How dare you jump in front of me?" Zhang Ruoxu's eyes lit up with a blood-red light. The next moment, the lion that was still fighting with the crowd suddenly roared into the sky. Roar. With a hoarse roar, the lion's body bloomed with blood-red light, and its body swelled several times, reaching a height of 20 feet. After enlarging, the lion roared and suddenly turned around. It suddenly swung its claws at the sword aura and flames that were being squeezed. Bang! Almost at the instant when the sharp claws came into contact with the sword chi, the wind from the claws howled, and the sharp claws suddenly broke all the sword chi in half, shattering it with a loud bang. Crack! Crack! Amidst a crisp sound, the sword chi shattered like glass, scattering in all directions and splattering everywhere. How could this be? Gasp! This. Seeing this, the crowd was shocked and looked at Zhang Ruoxu in disbelief. Previously, when Zhang Ruoxu was defeated by Lin Yi, although they did not say it out loud, they still looked down on Zhang Ruoxu in their hearts. They thought that Zhang Ruoxu's reputation was undeserved. Otherwise, Shun Fei would not have rushed out so recklessly. However, they did not expect Zhang Ruoxu's strength to be so strong. Just as the crowd was still in shock, the lion leaped up again and roared. A strong sound wave spread out and actually extinguished all the flames. It could be said that in an instant, the lion had destroyed more than 10,000 of Shun Fei's sword territory and more than 10,000 of his flame territory. Poof! The flames and sword chi shattered at the same time. Shun Fei's mind was affected, and his body trembled. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His aura was extremely weak, and his face was filled with shock. Impossible! Zhang Ruoxu can't even defeat that ant. How could he destroy my formation? Could it be that the ant is stronger than me? When he thought about how Lin Yi had easily defeated Zhang Ruoxu and how his attack had been neutralized by Zhang Ruoxu, Shun Fei's expression changed. His heart was filled with anger. He had been mocking Lin Yi. If he could not even defeat Lin Yi, then what was he? No, How can I be weaker than that ant? I must be stronger than him. If he could defeat Zhang Ruoxu, then I could do it too. Shen Fei kept repeating this sentence. He was in a trance, and his eyes were bloodshot. Fight, Zhang Ruoxu. Even if I die, I won't let you win so easily. I'll make you pay a terrible price. Shen Fei's eyes narrowed, and he went completely mad. He waved his right hand, and a fiery red feather fan appeared. In an instant, the temperature in the space suddenly became scorching hot. It was the supreme grade 10,000 inscriptions sacred weapon, the heavenly fire fan. This was the 10,000 inscriptions sacred weapon that the Shun family elder had given to Shun Fei. He had not used it before, but now, he could not help but use it with all his might. Beep, beep, beep. The 10,000 inscriptions sacred weapon was fully activated, and the sky was filled with flames. Together with Shun Fei's 10,000 flaming realms, the sea of fire burned fiercely, and it brought about an endless threat. Arg! Sea of fire! Burn, burn! Shun Fei went crazy. He pushed his hands forward, and in an instant, the scorching flames swept toward Zhang Ruoxu and the rest like a wave. The temperature was scorching. Before the flames arrived, everyone could feel the heat. They could not help but take a few steps back, their faces filled with anxiety. Interesting, but with this you still can't win. The corner of Zhang Ruoxu's mouth curled up. He had entered the heaven prohibition state, and he was not afraid of Shun Fei's attack at all. He had not only comprehended the earth realm, but also the water realm. Water and fire restrained each other. Generally speaking, whoever had a higher cultivation level would have an advantage. Now that his cultivation level was far higher than Shun Fei's, he did not have to worry about his fire attack at all. Zhang Ruoxu was glad that his luck had improved. If Shun Fei had comprehended other realms, it might have caused some trouble for Zhang Ruoxu. However, he had comprehended the fire realm, which was restrained by the water realm. He could not do much at all. Gulp, gulp. Chapter 4:01. As the water and fire mixed together, the flames burned brightly, causing the water to boil. However, a total of 17,000 Dao water domains suppressed the flame domain, causing the flames to be unable to cause it to boil completely. The cold water gushed out and extinguished the flames in just a few moments. Walala! The warm water gushed out and trapped Shun Fei and the rest of the people in it, spinning them around. Shun Fei and the rest of them were not as powerful as Zhang Ruoxu. In addition, the water was turbulent. After being spun around a few times and hit for a while, they were knocked unconscious by the turbulent water realm and lost their ability to fight back. Luckily, it was just a test. If it were a real battle, Zhang Ruoxu would only need to soak them in the water for a while, and they would drown. Buzz! A light pillar appeared and kicked all of the Shun family members out of the arena. All of a sudden, the Shun family members' faces turned pale. In the beginning, they did not pin their hopes on anyone else. They only thought that Shun Lingxiao could pass the test. Unexpectedly, because of Lin Ye's existence, there was a change in the assessment, and it gave the Shun family a big chance. However, before they could rejoice for long, Zhang Ruoxu had cruelly destroyed their hopes. At that moment, the Shun family members wanted to kill Zhang Ruoxu. The rest of the people were shocked. They did not expect Zhang Ruoxu to be so powerful. In the next moment, they turned to look at Lin Yi with a strange look in their eyes. Zhang Ruoxu was the second supreme talent of the Zhang family. However, he could not even withstand a few blows from Lin Yi. Does that mean that Lin Yi is as powerful as Zhang Tianheng and the rest of the people? Zhang Tianheng, who had passed the test, laughed out loud. Ha ha! This is Ruoxu's real strength. The Shin family wants to compete with the Zhang family? Wishful thinking. Upon hearing that, Shun Lingxiao's face turned pale, and he could not help but spit. However, the Shun family members were all sent out by Zhang Ruoxu. It was embarrassing, and there was no way for them to fight back. No matter how shocked the people were, the battle in the arena continued. After the Shun family members were beaten off the arena, the The rest of the people went crazy and started to fight for the remaining spots. Zhang Ruoxu and the others, on the other hand, kept a low profile. They did not take the initiative to start a conflict with others. They only guarded their own territories. There were still 300 spots left. Zhang Ruoxu and the rest's goal was to pass the assessment. If they were too high profile, it was very likely that they would be attacked by others. Although they were not weak, there was still a possibility that they would be eliminated if they were surrounded by hundreds of people. Therefore, Zhang Ruoxu admitted defeat. One had to admit that Zhang Ruoxu had made the right choice. Seeing that Zhang Ruoxu and the others did not take the initiative to attack, the rest of the people did not dare to provoke them. They all started to fight with the other weaker forces. A quarter of an hour later, before Zhang Ruoxu and the rest could join the fun again, the light screen on the arena suddenly flickered. The power inside was majestic like thunder. Sensing the change in the light screen, everyone raised their heads and looked at Fairy Xuanji in confusion. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, specks of light fell one after another. Like agile fish, they drilled into everyone's bodies. Even Lin Yi, Shun Lingxiao, and the rest were no exception. Lin Yi frowned slightly. He could clearly feel that the specks of light had entered his body and left a mark. The assessment has ended. You have 1 day to go home and prepare. Those who have passed the assessment will gather here at noon tomorrow. We will head to Cebu Gakuen. Each of you can bring at most 2 people with you. Each person has to pay 1,000 saint stones. As soon as she finished speaking, Fairy Xuanji's figure disappeared without a trace. Hiss! What a powerful move! Seeing this, everyone could not help but be shocked. No wonder Fairy Xuanji could go out alone at such a young age to take charge of the assessment. It turned out that her strength had already reached a new level. One should know that there were many top powers at the level of the great sage present. However, even they did not see how Fairy Xuanji left. After the assessment ended, everyone went home. Some were happy, while others were sad. They all had different emotions. Shen Tianping's face was terrifyingly gloomy. When Shun Fei and the rest returned home, they were all frightened and did not dare to speak. If they had been defeated by others, it would have been fine. After all, Shun Tianping did not expect them to pass the assessment. However, they had been defeated by the Shun family's biggest enemy, the Zhang family. In this way, the Shun family's reputation had been completely destroyed. It was only when Shun Lingxiao and Lin Yi returned that Shun Tianping's face looked much better. He smiled. No matter what, the Shun family had 2 people entering Cebu Gakuen this year. This would be beneficial to their development. Young man, you are not bad. Shen Tianping sized up Lin Yi carefully and suddenly smiled. Why don't you join the Shun family? There is no need. Lin Yi cupped his fists and said, I'm used to being lazy and do not want to join a family. This time, I owe you a favor. I will make it up to you in the future. Oh, if you don't want to join, then forget it. After being rejected, Shen Tianping was not angry. He nodded slightly and changed the topic. You were just lucky to defeat and injure Zhang Ruoxu. What's it to be proud of? However, Shun Tianping and the rest did not take it to heart. Among the Shun family, a faint voice could be heard. It is your honor to be invited to join the Shun family. How dare you not give us face? As soon as the voice finished speaking, Lin Yi, Shun Tianping, and Shun Lingxiao raised their eyebrows and their expressions turned serious. They looked in the direction of the voice and saw Shun Fei glaring at Lin Yi with resentment. Until now, Shun Fei still thought that Lin Yi was lucky to have met the severely injured Zhang Ruoxu. That was how he had passed the assessment. Therefore, he was not convinced by Lin Yi and was even more resentful of him. Why was Lin Yi able to defeat the severely injured Zhang Ruoxu and receive everyone's respect and admiration? Why was he defeated by the partially recovered Zhang Ruoxu and became a sinner? If he had not insisted on fighting one-on-one with Zhang Ruoxu, giving Zhang Ruoxu enough time to unleash his full power, and if he had attacked with a group of people, Zhang Ruoxu might have been knocked off the stage before he could even unleash his territory. After seeing Shun Fei, Lin Ye's heart was filled with anger. This Shun Fei had provoked him time and time again. How could he tolerate this? No matter how disrespectful I am, it's still better than you disgracing the Shun family. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "You can't even defeat an injured person. If I were you, I would have found a rope and hung myself." Upon hearing this, Shun Fei's face changed drastically. He was furious and glared at Lin Yi. The energy in his body was surging. Ha ha ha. Too many people from the Shun family have been eliminated. Is this an internal conflict? Chapter 402. Unlike the dispirited Shun clan, the members of the Zhang clan held their heads high and puffed out their chests. Their eyes were filled with pride. This time, 8 of them had passed the assessment. Compared to the Shun clan, which only had 2 people, the difference was like heaven and earth. Ha ha! The Zhang clan leader laughed arrogantly. He walked up to Shin Tianpeng and the rest and sized them up. He had been observing Lin Yi and Shun Lingxiao for a long time. Humph! With a cold snort, Shun Tianpeng bellowed, "Zhang Mo, consider yourself lucky this time. Luck is also a form of strength." Zhang Mo's lips curled into a smirk. The Shun clan and the Zhang clan had a grudge against each other. In addition, most of the Shun clan's disciples had been eliminated by Zhang Ruoxu. At this moment, everyone was glaring at each other. Zhang Ruoxu stared at Lin Yi, treating Lin Yi as his mortal enemy. Others thought he was unlucky to have met Lin Yi with a severely injured body. However, he could clearly feel the power hidden in Lin Yi's weakened body. Even if he was at his peak, he might not be a match for Lin Yi. Therefore, he did not underestimate Lin Yi. Instead, his desire to fight was ignited. Zhang Ruoxu's talent was not very strong. However, he was able to become the second genius of the Zhang clan, second only to Zhang Tianheng, because of his extraordinary willpower. Looks like he will get fewer resources in the next 10 years. Zhang Mo sneered. Without these resources, I wonder how many of you will pass the next assessment. 1? Or all of you will be eliminated. Let's wait and see. Shin Tianping's lips twitched. He glared at Zhang Mo and clenched his fists. If it wasn't for the fact that the assessment had just ended, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to fight with the Zhang clan. Ha ha! Upon hearing this, Zhang Mo laughed heartily. Soon after, he looked towards Lin Yi and softly said, "Little brother, I know that you're not a disciple of the Shun family. Are you interested in joining our Zhang family? With your aptitude and strength, if you join the Zhang family, we can provide you with the cultivation resources of a saint. We'll give you 5,000 saint stones every month." What? 5,000 holy stones? Hiss. Provide cultivation resources for saints. Oh my God, is the Zhang family crazy? He's actually willing to sacrifice so much for a mere 5th tribulation half-true saint? Humph. He defeated Zhang Ruoxu when he was only a 5th tribulation half-true saint. If you can do the same, the Zhang family will treat you the same way. In an instant, everyone who heard Zhang Mo's words were extremely shocked and began to discuss in low voices. Even Zhang Tianheng, Zhang Ruoxu, and the others were stunned in place, their faces filled with astonishment. Such treatment was enough to attract Saint Realm experts to work for the Zhang clan. It was truly too generous. Raising an eyebrow, Lin Yi revealed a surprised expression. He too had not expected Zhang Mo to think so highly of him. 5,000 saint stones was definitely a huge sum, but Zhang Mo casually said it out loud. It was obvious how much he valued Lin Yi. One had to know that Lin Yi had many treasures on him, but they were only worth 23,000 saint stones. 5,000 saint stones a month, and cultivation resources were too generous. Raising his head, he saw Zhang Mo looking at him with a smile. Lin Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. Was Zhang Mo testing him, or was he trying to rope him in? How about it? Think about it again. Zhang Mo smiled faintly as he stared fixedly at Lin Yi. He did not put the rest of the Shun family in his eyes. This enraged Shin Tianpeng and the others, and they glared fiercely at Zhang and Mo. Trying to rope him in right in front of him was no different from slapping his face. Zhang and Mo, you're too presumptuous, Shen Tianpeng snorted and said solemnly, since you're so arrogant, how about we have a battle 7 days later? All right. Almost at the same time, Zhang and Mo, who was looking at Lin Yi, suddenly looked at Shen Tianpeng with a smile. Since Brother Shen is interested, I won't refuse. 7 days later, let's have a battle. We'll talk about the specific rules later. Ha ha ha. With that, Zhang Yemo ignored the stunned Shen Tianpeng and left the square laughing. As he left, Zhang Ruoxu looked deeply at Lin Yi and smiled brightly. Everyone in the Shun family was stunned, especially Shen Tianpeng, whose mouth kept twitching. What was going on? He was the one who suggested the battle. Why was Zhang Yemo so excited? Could it be that this bastard is trying to provoke me so that I'll take the initiative to fight him? At this thought, Shen Tianpeng could not help but have an ominous feeling. He felt like he had fallen into a trap, but he had already said it, and it was too late to regret it. He could only leave with a gloomy face. After leaving the square, Dishi Xiao, Tian Yi, and Murong Nen came up to celebrate Lin Ye's success in passing the test. Lin Yi, good job. Only you can hold the heavenly purification territory together. Dishi Xiao, Tian Yi, and the others smiled brightly, but they were still ashamed in their hearts. As the top geniuses of the heavenly purification territory, they did not even have the chance to fight on the stage. It was a huge blow to them. Noticing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but lightly pat their shoulders and said in a deep voice, "Gold will shine no matter where it goes. We were in the heavenly purification territory and lacked resources. That's why your strength fell behind. Now that you're here, as long as you're willing to work hard, I believe you'll catch up again soon." With Lin Yi's comfort, Dishi Xiao and the others felt much better. They did not disturb Lin Yi and left together. Looking at their backs, Lin Yi sighed softly and did not care anymore. Blue Cloud Inn, Silent Soul, Sun Wuyu, Zhang Xiaochu, Zhuge Ling, and the others had already gathered and were waiting for Lin Yi to return. Have you all investigated? Lin Yi looked at everyone and asked directly. Yes, although St. Martial City is powerful, compared to the other cities, it's still considered weak. There are only a few great sage. The experts on the surface are only peak sages. There's no need to be afraid. If we develop here, I'm confident that we can develop it within a year. Sun Wuyu and the others were full of confidence. With their current strength, it was indeed no pressure to deal with sages. Even if they faced a great sage, they had the strength to fight back. That's good. Lin Yi nodded slightly. This time, I could take 2 people with me. Silent Soul, Sun Wuyu, and I will go. As for the rest, 5 will stay in St. Martial City to develop. The remaining 8 will go to other areas. My request for you is not to become the overlord of a force, but to gather information. Only when we have the information in our hands can we take the initiative. Do you understand? Chapter 4:03. You can decide on the specific personnel allocation yourselves. I only have one request. Be careful of your own safety. Patting everyone's shoulders, Lin Yi continued. Tomorrow morning, I'll leave with Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu. You guys have to work hard too. Don't worry, Captain, we won't let you down. Lai Tenyu, Zhang Ruochu, and the others grinned, their faces full of confidence. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi continued to recover from his injuries while Lai Tenyu, Xue Feng, Zhuge Ling, and the others discussed. Needless to say, the recovery of the space's injuries was too slow. Even though Lin Yi had put all his efforts into healing, he still hadn't fully recovered after such a long time. Fortunately, he was about to leave for Cebu Gakuen, giving him time to recover on the way. The next morning, Xue Feng, Zhuge Ling, and the others parted ways with Lin Yi and headed to the other cities. Lai Tenyu, on the other hand, stayed in St. Martial Sky City with the other 4 to slowly develop. Before leaving, Lin Yi suddenly thought of the bet between the Zhang and Shun families in 6 days. Rolling his eyes, he revealed this matter to Lai Tenyu. Lin Yi believed that with Lai Tenyu's strength, he could definitely cause chaos in the Zhang and Shun families. Although he owed the Shun family a favor by participating in the exam, sometimes it was necessary to plan. When Lin Yi brought Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu to the Shun family, the Shun family had already gathered in the courtyard. At the instant they saw a solitary spirit, everyone, including Shun Tianping and Shun Lingxiao, were dazed for a moment, and their expressions were dumbstruck as they looked at solitary spirit with gazes that were filled with shock and adoration. Silent Soul's charm was too strong. Even a veteran saint couldn't avoid it. If it wasn't for Lin Ye's light cough, Shun Tianping and Shun Lingxiao wouldn't have recovered from the shock. Solitary spirit was already used to this sort of situation long ago, and he just silently stood behind Lin Yi. "They're finally here." Shin Tianpeng smiled awkwardly and quickly said, "We're about to set off. Let's go to the square together. By the way, Lin Yi, you're using the Shun family's quota this time. So, when you arrive at Cebu Gakuen, your ranking and rewards will be given directly to the Shun family. If you don't want to, I can keep those resources and wait for you to come back and collect them." At first, Shin Tianpeng wanted to directly take away Lin Ye's rewards. But today, when he realized that there was actually a saint following behind Lin Yi, and it seemed that he only obeyed Lin Yi, his heart trembled, and he immediately changed his mind. Thinking about how Lin Yi had passed the test with his fifth tribulation half-true saint cultivation, it was clear that his luck and strength were extraordinary. For Lin Yi, roping him in and showing goodwill was far better than causing a conflict. Therefore, Shin Tianpeng made this decision. The ranking rewards are actually given to the families. Lin Yi frowned slightly. This made him feel quite uncomfortable. If the resources and rewards were given to the families, wouldn't he be in an awkward position? Every time he wanted to get the rewards, he had to travel thousands of miles back. The time he took to rush back was enough for him to cultivate for a long time. There are two ranking rewards, one for the individual and the other for the family. Shun Tianpeng explained, "You're using the Shun family's quota, so in Cebu Gakuen, you're branded as part of the Shun family. The rewards that belong to the families will be given to the Shun family." So that's how it is. Hearing this, Lin Yi relaxed. It was good enough that he could get the individual reward. As for the family reward, since no one else could get it, he didn't need it. Moreover, this time, he owed the Shun family a favor. Originally, he was having a headache over how to repay the favor, but he didn't expect to be given a solution so quickly. "Master Shun, thanks to your quota, I was able to enter Cebu Gakuen. You can distribute these resources yourselves." Lin Yi smiled slightly and said indifferently, "You've helped me, so this is what you deserve." This, Shin Tianping blinked and stared at Lin Yi suspiciously. Then he asked, "Lin Yi, do you know how generous the rewards are? No matter how generous it is, you deserve it." Lin Yi shook his head slightly. Hearing this, Shan Tianpeng was stunned at first, then he laughed out loud. "Ha, good. Since you're so straightforward, I won't refuse. Thank you, little brother." Previously, when he chose to give up the resources, Shen Tianpeng felt extremely pained. Now that he heard that Lin Yi was willing to give the resources to the Shun family, he was naturally very excited. He even changed the way he addressed Lin Yi and directly called him little brother. This made Shin Lingxiao and the rest embarrassed. Lin Yi was suddenly in the same generation as Shun Tianpeng. Didn't that mean that he was older than them? This is what he should do. Right at this moment, a discordant voice abruptly rang out. "Using my Shun family's quota to pass the assessment, and you still want to take away the rewards? You're thinking too highly of yourself." Following this voice, Shun Tianpeng, Shun Lingxiao, and Lin Ye's faces darkened, especially the few elders of the Shun family. Their faces were terrifyingly gloomy. It wasn't easy for two people to enter Cebu Gakuen and obtain a lot of resources. Yet, someone dared to mock Lin Yi like this. That person was simply courting death. Even if it was for the sake of those resources, they were willing to be polite and respectful to Lin Yi. They didn't expect that someone would be so blind. In an instant, Everyone turned around and looked in the direction of the voice. They saw Shun Fei looking at Lin Yi with jealousy. Ever since he lost to Zhang Ruoxu, Shun Fei's heart was filled with resentment when he saw the change in everyone's attitude towards Lin Yi. From his point of view, it was obvious that Lin Yi was too lucky to pass the assessment. If Lin Yi had met Zhang Ruoxu, who had recovered from his injuries, he definitely wouldn't have been able to defeat him. Resentment, and seeing that Lin Yi had a beautiful woman like Silent Soul by his side, Shun Fei couldn't suppress the jealousy in his heart. That was why he spoke out in a moment of carelessness. However, Shun Fei didn't expect that at this moment, the elders of the Shun family all saw Lin Yi as the god of wealth. Why would they help him? Bastard. The elders' faces darkened as they stared at Shun Fei. If not for Shun Fei's strength, they would have attacked him on the spot. Lin Yi was furious, but his expression didn't change. He only said calmly, "It seems like this brother has some misunderstanding about me. There's no such thing." Shen Tianping's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Lin Yi wasn't going to be kind this time. He immediately waved his hand and said indifferently, "Shun Fei has a problem with his brain. Second elder, third elder, take him down and treat him." The two elders were slightly shocked. They looked up and saw that Shun Tianping's face was serious. It didn't seem like he was joking. They could only grit their teeth and drag Shun Fei away as Shun Fei shouted. Seeing this, the rest of the disciples felt a chill run down their spines and couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 404. Little brother, don't take it to heart. Shun Tianpeng smiled brightly. Our Shen family has always treated little brother as an honored guest. No one will humiliate you. That's good. Lin Yi felt disdain in his heart, but a smile appeared on his face. Rest assured, Patriarch Shun, you are free to distribute the rewards. In the future, when we arrive at Cebu Gakuin, I still want to cultivate with brother Ling Xiao. The corner of Shun Ling Xiao's mouth twitched, and he pursed his lips. He did not take Lin Yi to heart. In his opinion, although Lin Yi could defeat Zhang Ruoxu, there was still a gap between him and Zhang Tianheng. If Lin Yi treated him respectfully, he could still help Lin Yi out on account of the Shun family quota. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be so rude, which made him feel uncomfortable? Shun Ling Xiao, was the #1 genius of the Shun family. Even in the St. Martial Heavenly City, he was famous, but he was taught a lesson by a fifth tribulation half-true saint. Fortunately, Shen Tianpeng and the others did not chat with Lin Yi for too long, and they set off with the crowd. This made Shun Ling Xiao and the others heave a sigh of relief. It was finally over. If they had continued, they might have become Lin Ye's juniors. After the assessment ended, the St. Martial Heavenly City's square was much emptier. Other than those who passed the assessment, no one else could enter. Even Shun Tianpeng could only send Shun Ling Xiao and Lin Yi to the square's entrance and could not enter. After entering the square, Shun Ling Xiao glanced at Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu behind Lin Yi, and a fiery light flashed in his eyes. He smiled and said, "Little brother, if you want to bring such beautiful women to Cebu Gakuin, your life in the future won't be too stable." With that, Shun Ling Xiao put his hands on his head, ignoring Lin Yi and Silent Soul as he walked towards the center of the square. "Young master, this fellow is too arrogant." Silent Soul paused for a moment before gritting his teeth. "Do you want me to teach him a lesson?" TSK, isn't that right?" Sun Wuyu suddenly said. "Femme fatale. You are so beautiful. There will definitely be a lot of people coming to find trouble with the captain." Don't worry about that." Lin Yi waved his hand, indicating that Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu didn't need to think too much as they walked towards the center of the square. At this moment, there were 10 flying dragons with silver scales lying in the center of the square. Beside each flying dragon, there were also elders from Cebu Gakuin checking everyone's identity. After verifying his identity, he waited by the side. As for Fairy Xuanji, she stood under a statue not far away and looked up at the sky. No one knew what she was looking at. Randomly picking a place with fewer people, Lin Yi and the other two lined up. TSK, Cebu Gakuin is really generous. These are dimensional flying dragons comparable to saints. 10-dimensional flying dragons, my goodness. Could it be that Cebu Gakuin has something new up their sleeves this time? I remember that they used to use the space tunnel to rush over. This time, they used the dimensional flying dragons. There must be something wrong. Although the dimensional flying dragons are slower than the space tunnel, they can go to many dangerous places, which is not something that the space tunnel can compare to. The changes this year are too great compared to the previous years. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. The voices of discussion rose and fell. Lin Yi and the other two couldn't help but be surprised. They looked at each other, not understanding Cebu Gakuin's actions. Soon, the elders checked Lin Yi. As soon as he saw Silent Soul, the elder was confused for a moment, but quickly recovered. He frowned and sized up Silent Soul. Interesting. After muttering, the elder waved his right hand and looked at Lin Yi in surprise. He blurted out, "You're the one who passed the test?" Hearing this, Lin Yi and the other two were stunned. The elder smiled bitterly. "I thought it was this little girl who passed the test. I didn't expect it. You want to bring the two of them to the academy?" After saying that, the elder stared at Lin Yi. "Yes, here are 2,000 holy stones. Sorry to trouble you, elder." Lin Yi respectfully took out the holy stones that he had prepared and handed them to the elder. The elder didn't accept them. Instead, he said in a deep voice, "Perhaps you don't know, but let me remind you. When you reach Cebu Gakuin, all of the expenses of the two people you bring along will be charged to you. If you want to have a good life in Cebu Gakuin, points are essential. If you want to use one person's points to support 3 people, it's not easy. Why bother with such a charming girl? Thank you for the reminder, elder." Hearing this, Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly thanked the elder. He didn't know about this before, but luckily he knew now. Otherwise, when he reached Cebu Gakuin, he wouldn't know that the points would be used by 3 people, and he would be short on points. Now that he knew, all he had to do was to prepare and earn more points. Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu looked at Lin Yi and hesitated. Just as they were about to speak, they were interrupted by Lin Yi. "Oh, you still insist on bringing them along?" The elder was slightly surprised and immediately accepted the 2,000 holy stones from Lin Yi. He said softly, "Good luck. Sit on the spatial dragon. We'll depart soon." "Thank you, elder." After thanking him again, Lin Yi and the other two jumped onto the spatial dragon and found a corner to sit down. As soon as they sat down, Sun Wuyu said, "Captain, our expenses all cost points. Why don't Silent Soul and I go as well?" "No need," Lin Yi said indifferently. "It's just points, don't worry." "All right then." Hearing this, Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul were touched. Originally, they were still wondering why the others didn't bring people into the Cebu Gakuin, but after hearing the elder's explanation, they understood that the pressure of bringing people in was too great, and it could affect their own cultivation. Therefore, unless they were very confident, or they were the young masters of the top forces, very few people would choose to bring people into the Cebu Gakuin. But the people they followed, despite knowing the difficulties, still decided to bring them along, which made them extremely touched. After calming their minds, Ji Ling and Sun Wuyu started to size up the surroundings. It had to be said that the spatial dragon's body was huge. Its body was more than 10 feet long, and it wouldn't be crowded even if 100 people sat on it. It allowed everyone to rest or meditate without disturbing others. After a while, the 1,000 people who passed the test all arrived. The elders all jumped onto the back of the spatial dragon and began to communicate with it. Roar. The next moment, the dragon's roar suddenly sounded, and the ethereal power of space rippled, causing the entire square to become illusory. Fairy Xuanji floated and suddenly flew to the front. She raised her slender hand and pointed forward. "Let's go." Roar. Chapter 405. The spatial wyvern had a special ability. Every 10 breaths, the scales on its body would give it the ability to travel through space. When it appeared again, it could travel a long distance. Therefore, in places where space tunnels could not be built, the spatial wyvern was the best means of transportation. What was more amazing was that after the spatial wyvern's special ability was activated, a protective shield would appear on its back, which could protect the people on it. Of course, the spatial wyvern was very rare. Only powerful forces like Cebu Gakuin could afford it. This time, for a special segment after the assessment, Cebu Gakuin used more than 200 spatial wyverns to arrange for all the candidates who passed the assessment to be in one place. Lin Yi and the rest were among them. It had to be said that the spatial wyvern was very comfortable. No matter how fast it traveled, it would not disturb the people on its back. After knowing that the spatial wyvern would take at least 10 days to travel, Lin Yi entered the ninefold space and started cultivating with the Universe Pagoda. January, March, May. In the first 3 months, Lin Yi focused on healing himself. Finally, he recovered from the space injuries in his body and returned to his peak condition. In his peak condition, he was not afraid of Zhang Tianheng, Shun Lingxiao, and the rest. After recovering from his injuries, Lin Yi sensed his divine thoughts and started cultivating the Celestial Emperor Fist and the Sky Destroyer Finger. He had finished cultivating the first volume of the 3,000 Ways of Heaven. As he had not found a second volume, he could not continue cultivating. The Celestial Emperor Fist was very powerful. Without using his trump card, he could deal with many experts. Time passed quickly as he immersed himself in cultivation. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Soon, 3 years had passed. Lin Yi had cultivated the Celestial Emperor Fist to the 7th level. It was more powerful than before. As for the Sky Destroyer Finger, it had broken through 2 levels and was not much weaker than the Celestial Emperor Fist. At the same time, 9 days had passed in the outside world. The people on the spatial wyvern had finished their cultivation and started talking. After ending his cultivation, Lin Yi exited the ninefold space and slowly opened his eyes. Young master, we're almost there. Many people are forming factions now. Silent Soul said directly. Forming factions? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows, but he didn't pay it much heed. No matter how strong Cebu Gakuin was, it was still an academy. However, while Lin Yi was unwilling to participate, the others were very optimistic about Lin Yi. To be able to defeat Zhang Ruoxu, whether it was luck or something else, it was enough to show that he was not weak. Therefore, after seeing Lin Yi exit from his cultivation, someone quickly came up to him. Hee, Brother Lin, how much do you know about Cebu Gakuin? An elegant young master approached Lin Yi with a respectful attitude, but when he looked at Silent Soul, his eyes flashed with greed. Noticing this, Lin Yi felt disdain for that young master. He frowned and said impatiently, You'll understand when you get there. You don't need to waste your breath. Hearing this, the elegant young master's face turned gloomy. Brother Lin, I know you're not weak, but in Cebu Gakuin, the ones who really bully us are the old students. They're very xenophobic. When you enter the academy, if you don't ally with us, you won't have a chance to survive. Oh, raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi couldn't help but look at the man strangely. Ha! The young man tightened his clothes and said proudly, My brother is a member of Cebu Gakuin. I got a lot of information from him. He can lead everyone through the most difficult time. As long as you follow me, Du Yuelin, you won't be at a disadvantage. With that, Du Yuelin patted his chest, his face full of arrogance. At the same time, the rest of the people gathered around. When they heard Du Yuelin's name, a few of them were shocked and shouted, Du Yuelin? Du Yuetian is your brother? Du Yuetian is in the top 300 of Cebu Gakuin's Ordeal Sage Board. This, in an instant, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Although they didn't know what the Ordeal Sage Board was in Cebu Gakuin, there were hundreds of thousands of students. To be in the top 100 of a board meant that he was definitely a powerful person. Rolling their eyes, the people gathered around and started to compliment Du Yuelin. Brother Du, I was rude to you just now. Please don't take it to heart. Brother Du, we could talk about what happened just now. Almost instantly, whether it was those who had agreed to Du Ellen's request or those who had rejected him, they all surrounded him and complimented him. Well said, well said. For a moment, Du Ellen felt like he was floating. Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Sun Wuyu frowned and were annoyed. They looked up and saw that the elder not far away had a calm expression, as if he didn't care about Du Ellen and the others at all. They couldn't help but be surprised. Could it be that these people didn't care about the news of Cebu Gakuen and formed factions in advance? This wasn't good for the development of an academy. After taking a closer look, Lin Ye's expression became more and more unpleasant. That elder really didn't care. It seems that after arriving at Cebu Gakuen, those elders won't care about our fight at all. Interesting. This trip to Cebu Gakuen is going to be fun. The corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up slightly. He couldn't help but look forward to it. He wanted to see what kind of geniuses were in the famous Cebu Gakuen. Only by competing with those true monstrous geniuses would he be able to motivate himself to become even stronger. After a while, Du Ellen finished listening to everyone's compliments, but he pushed them away and said to Lin Yi and the others, "How about it, Brother Lin? Do you want to consider joining us? You're pretty good being able to defeat Zhang Ruoxu. You definitely won't be any weaker than Zhang Tianheng and Shun Lingxiao. When the time comes, I'll call for more people, and you'll definitely do better than the other freshmen. And this lady, I wonder if you're interested in joining us." After he finished speaking, Du Ellen stared at Silent Soul with a strange look in his eyes. At this time, everyone could see that Du Ellen wanted to drag Lin Yi along just for Silent Soul. His mouth twitching, Lin Yi looked up at Du Ellen and said indifferently, "I'm not interested in what you're saying. Stay away from me and don't disturb my rest." After being ignored by Lin Yi time and time again, and in front of a beauty, Du Ellen was furious. He said angrily, "Lin, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Also, I'm inviting the lady beside you. You don't have to answer." Oh, hearing this, Lin Yi suddenly stood up, his eyes flashing as he stared at Du Ellen. "What did you just say?" Chapter 406. His sharp gaze landed on Du Ellen. It was as if an ice blade was placed on his neck, causing him to tremble in fear and not dare to speak. At this moment, Du Ellen finally felt the pressure. He felt like he was a small boat in the middle of a stormy sea that could be destroyed at any moment. His face was filled with fear. Du Ellen's heart was suppressed. His heart was thumping as he trembled. His legs turned to jelly as he knelt on the ground. It wasn't just Du Ellen. The others saw that they were about to fight and were about to step forward to stop them. However, they couldn't help but take a few steps back as they looked at Lin Yi in shock. "My people aren't someone you can talk about as you wish." Lin Yi's eyes were cold. He looked at Du Ellen as if he was looking at a dead man. Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu stood behind Lin Yi and looked at Du Ellen coldly as well. The strong, holy aura gradually pressed down and alerted the elder at the side. Cough, cough. The elder waved his right hand. In an instant, the holy aura and chill dissipated, and the dragon's back returned to its peaceful state. "We're almost there. We're all from the same city, so try not to have any conflicts." Cough, cough. After coughing a few times, the elder said faintly, "Once we're there, you'll be able to compete with the geniuses from other cities and the older generation of students. That's what you're capable of." "Thank you for the reminder, elder." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi pulled Silent Soul to the side and pulled away from Du Ellen and the others. After Du Ellen was no longer under the threat of the chill, he quickly reacted. His face was filled with shame and anger. He didn't think that after knowing his brother's identity, Lin Yi still dared to treat him like this. He didn't give him any face. "Bastard Lin Yi, wait until we get to Cebu Gakuen. I'll teach you a lesson. When that time comes, I want you to kneel down and watch as your woman delights under my body." Du Ellen's eyes were filled with resentment as he glared at Lin Yi. If it wasn't for his lack of strength, he would have already attacked Lin Yi. It had to be said that being a femme fatale wasn't a joke. They hadn't even entered Cebu Gakuin yet, and the conflict between Silent Soul and Du Ellen was already very likely to affect the top 300 experts on the Holy Transformation leaderboard. The commotion was not small at all. The farce quickly came to an end with the intervention of the elders. However, the seeds of resentment had already been planted. Du Ellen didn't rest. Instead, he continued to persuade the other students, pulling them to his side. It had to be said that Du Ellen was quite eloquent. In addition to the elder brother that he mentioned, he actually managed to rope in more than 30 people, which seemed to be a mighty force. This made those people feel much more at ease. Of course, most of them were 8th Tribulation half-true saints. There were very few 9th Tribulation half-true saints. However, those who were confident in their own strength didn't join Du Ellen. Instead, they looked at him with interest, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Time trickled by. Soon, a dragon's roar resounded, and the spatial dragon's speed slowed down abruptly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The void shattered, and the spatial dragon rushed out of the spatial crack. Lin Yi and the others stood up. When they looked up, their expressions changed slightly, revealing a look of shock. Hundreds of spatial dragons were circling in the air, gathering in the sky. Tyrannical, holy aura covered the sky, and it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Everyone felt their chests tighten, and they couldn't help but bend their bodies slightly. Even the elders were no exception. They bowed with a solemn expression on their faces. In the sky, more than 10 figures stood in the air. They were both men and women, and their aura was magnificent. Fairy Xuanji was among them, and her expression was solemn. See, Cebu Gakuin's 13 palace masters. Oh God, what's going on this year? Why is there such a big lineup? Fairy Xuanji's appearance is enough to surprise us. I didn't expect 4 of the 10 great starry sky geniuses to come. Seeing the 13 figures, almost all the geniuses from all over the world and from any city gasped, and their faces were full of shock. Generally speaking, this kind of assessment only required a few palace masters to come. They didn't expect 4 of the 10 great starry sky geniuses to come this year. They couldn't believe it at all. At this moment, even the arrogant Shun Ling Xiao, Zhang Tianheng, and the others were completely convinced when they saw the 13 figures. Those people were young, but they were already great sage realm experts. It was admirable. However, before the crowd could greet the 13 palace masters, they saw them bowing respectfully to the void with their hands folded in front. What? What's going on? Seeing this scene, the crowd was stunned. They had thought that the arrival of the 13 palace masters and the 4 great starry sky geniuses was already giving them face. They didn't expect even more powerful figures to appear. This made the crowd in a daze. They couldn't believe it. Normally, 2 or 3 palace masters would be enough for this kind of assessment. Now that so many experts had taken the initiative to come, they were very worried. Could it be that there would be a big change in this year's assessment? Welcome, 18th Elder. Welcome, 18th Elder. In a loud voice, a space crack suddenly appeared in the sky. In the next moment, a figure slowly stepped out of the space crack. The space around the figure vibrated, and his entire body was shrouded in a special aura. At first glance, people had the urge to bow down and worship him. Gulp. In the sound of swallowing, everyone raised their heads and looked at the figure in a daze. That person wasn't old. His face was solemn and dignified. Coupled with his rippling space aura, the crowd couldn't help but bow slightly. Only Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and a few others had the pressure of a sage. Although they felt uncomfortable, they didn't bow and only bowed. After all, that person was an elder of Cebu Gakuin. They were now disciples of Cebu Gakuin. It was only right for them to bow to him. Everyone bow. After accepting everyone's bow, the figure said in a deep voice, "My name is Theta Scarabii. I am the 18th Elder of Cebu Gakuin. I have specially come here to welcome everyone's arrival. Everyone, don't be restrained. Since you've come to Cebu Gakuin, We are family. And you are all the hope of Cebu Gakuen. As soon as he finished speaking, the tens of thousands of people suddenly burst into an uproar. They looked at Theta Scarabii in shock. They were already prepared to listen to Theta Scarabii's long speech, but they didn't expect that Theta Scarabii's words would shock them. In every assessment and trial, they heard all kinds of official words. But this time, Theta Scarabii's words warmed their hearts. Your participation is Cebu Gakuen's blessing. Theta Scarabii suddenly bowed slightly to the crowd. I, Theta Scarabii, am here to thank everyone for trusting Cebu Gakuen, trusting us, and being willing to become a family with us. Chapter 407. If it was said that Theta Scarabii's word from before made everyone feel a sense of belonging to Cebu Gakuen, they were moved. But this time, Theta Scarabii's bow made everyone's blood boil. Their emotions were stirred up, and they completely treated Cebu Gakuen as a big family. Elder Theta Scarabii, you're too kind. Once a disciple of Cebu Gakuen, forever a member of Cebu Gakuen. Once I enter Cebu Gakuen, this will be my second family. Everyone shouted one after another. Their emotions were all stirred up, and their eyes were red. Even Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Sun Wuyu were stirred up, and they almost shouted out loud. When they finally reacted, their minds were greatly shaken, and they looked at Theta Scarabii in shock. They could feel that Theta Scarabii didn't use any secret techniques or other methods to control or intensify their emotions. She had completely used her own actions to convince everyone to sincerely join Cebu Gakuen and become a part of Cebu Gakuen. TSK. No wonder Cebu Gakuen is so strong and has such a strong cohesive force. With someone like Theta Scarabii, even if there aren't many of them, just 2 or 3 would be enough to make a force terrifying. Perhaps in a few more years, Cebu Gakuen's strength will become even more terrifying. Lin Ye's face was solemn. For the first time, he felt the terror of Cebu Gakuen. After the bow, Theta Scarabii raised her hand slightly and suppressed the voices of the crowd. She slowly sized up the many spatial dragons and suddenly laughed. This year, I'm sure everyone will be puzzled as to why the assessment this time is so complicated and why so many people were called. Moreover, there are quite a few of you who passed the assessment. Theta Scarabii said slowly, this year, Cebu Gakuen will implement a reform, and all of you are the lucky ones in this batch. From this year onwards, there will be a new way of training. Not only that, you will also be able to enjoy the same treatment as before. Of course, the pressure of competition will also be much greater. Fisk, there are quite a few people. There really is a reform? I wonder how many people passed the assessment this year. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be suspicious, and they began to look in other directions. When they realized that there were over 100 spatial dragons that stretched as far as the eye could see, their faces were filled with shock. In the next moment, they couldn't help but despair. With so many people being recruited this year, wouldn't the pressure on them be even greater? Perhaps the monsters in each city couldn't guarantee that they would still be able to survive in Cebu Gakuen. They could only take one step at a time. After all, there were too many people, and there was always someone better than you. In this world, there was no lack of intelligent dark horses. Of course, you don't have to worry. After sensing the despair in everyone's hearts, Theta Scarabii changed the topic and shouted again. Although there are more people and more competition, there are also more opportunities for you. This year, a total of 10,090 people passed the assessment and joined Cebu Gakuen. Your rewards have also tripled compared to previous years. Also, from this year onwards, before you officially join Cebu Gakuen, there will be a special segment. At this point, Theta Scarabii suddenly paused and scanned the crowd. In an instant, everyone became nervous, and their eyes were fixed on Theta Scarabii. Everyone was extremely curious. They wanted to know what that special link was. After waiting for a while, even Fairy Xuanji and the elder in charge of escorting them were puzzled and looked at Theta Scarabii in a daze. Their positions in Cebu Gakuen weren't even considered as high-ranking officials, so they didn't know about these confidential matters. The special segment is the hunting war. Theta Scarabee's lips curled up slightly and revealed a strange expression. Hunting war? Hearing that name, everyone couldn't help but frown. Could it be that after passing the assessment, they still had to hunt for spirit beasts? Compete for rankings? Looking down, they saw that under the space dragon was a boundless forest, and they became even more certain of their suspicions. This made them extremely puzzled, and they didn't understand why Cebu Gakuen still held such an assessment. It was purely a waste of time. Hunting spirit beasts not only depended on one's abilities, but also on one's luck. They didn't want to have bad luck and end up with a lower ranking and not be able to enter Cebu Gakuen's inner sect. There was a huge gap between the inner sect and the outer sect, and they didn't want to miss this opportunity. However, at this moment, they had a very good impression of Theta Scarabei, and they didn't want to go against Theta Scarabei's wishes. This hunting war isn't what everyone thinks it is, where you hunt for spirit beasts. Instead, at this point, Theta Scarabei laughed again and looked at the students with interest. It's actually not hunting for spirit beasts? Then what is it? Could it be that we have to compete with each other? Fight to the death? Everyone started to speculate. Of course not. Theta Scarabei laughed and said, I've already said that once we enter Cebu Gakuen, we're family. Naturally, I won't let you kill each other. If it's not hunting for spirit beasts, and it's not hunting for each other, then what is it? Hearing this, everyone was extremely shocked and looked at Theta Scarabei in confusion. Not only them, even Fairy Xuanji and the rest were confused and didn't understand what Theta Scarabei was up to. This hunting war is based on points. Theta Scarabei smiled and said, I'm sure everyone has heard from other sources that in Cebu Gakuen, all expenses require points. This hunting war is based on points. At the start of the hunting war, I'll give everyone 1,000 points and allow everyone to stay in the Divine Spirit Mountains for half a month. In this half a month, you can hunt spirit beasts and exchange them for points. You can also exchange points with each other, and you can even snatch the points of others, as long as you don't harm your own life. After half a month, the points that everyone has left will be your own, and it'll be considered a benefit. From then on, you have to earn your own points. Hearing this, everyone's eyes widened, and they immediately understood what was going on, and they all rubbed their fists. They all knew that points were extremely important, and it would be very difficult to earn points in the future. This time, they would have 1,000 points at the start of the hunting war, and they could even snatch the points of others. This was the best opportunity. If they missed this opportunity, the difficulty of earning points in Cebu Gakuen would increase exponentially. However, some of the weaker individuals started to feel helpless. They understood that with their strength, they wouldn't be able to keep their points. They might even be beaten up. Of course. Chapter 408. Wow, what's going on? They're transferring disciples from the inner sect? Or are they looking for a beating? They've already advanced to the sage level. Wouldn't it be child's play for them to beat us up? I'm afraid we won't have any points left, right? Everyone was extremely depressed. Even prodigies like Shun Lingxiao had a grave expression on their faces. Although they all had the ability to battle with a sage, those who could enter Cebu Gakuen were all geniuses. Furthermore, after 10 years of cultivation, their abilities would definitely be stronger than before. Ordinary sages would definitely not be able to compare to them. They still had confidence in defeating the outer sect disciples, but they had no confidence in defeating the inner sect disciples. Only Lin Yi and the other two remained calm. So what if they were sages? Countless sages had died in their hands. Trying to snatch their points was simply a dream. Don't worry. Sensing everyone's panic, Theta Scarabei smiled and said, 180 of them are outer sect disciples. There are only 20 inner sect disciples. Furthermore, there's a limit to how many points can be snatched. When a person loses more than 80% of his total points in a month, the points cannot be transferred. That means that even if it doesn't work out, everyone can still get a minimum of 200 points. Of course, to encourage everyone to be braver, we've also set up an award. If anyone defeats an outer sect disciple, each person will receive 300 points. If anyone defeats an inner sect disciple, each person will receive 3,000 points. To allow everyone to cultivate more smoothly, after the hunting competition begins, I'll also open up a treasure vault for everyone to use their points to exchange for more points to increase their abilities. The treasure vault contains all the cultivation resources that a sage needs. It will definitely not disappoint everyone. As Theta Scarabii explained the rules of the hunting competition and the rewards, everyone listened attentively and respectfully. Fairy Xuanji and the rest were also shocked. Immediately, they revealed looks of envy. When they first entered Cebu Gakuen, they only received 100 points in the first month. In addition, they were bullied by the older disciples. It could be said that they had led a miserable life. They didn't expect that this batch of people would be treated so well. If they were strong enough, they could snatch tens of thousands of points and exchange them for many treasures to increase their abilities. It was simply too profitable. At the same time, they finally understood the intentions of Theta Scarabii and the rest. This was to stimulate the newcomers so that they would have more motivation to compete, cultivate, and become stronger while the competition between the newcomers grew bigger. A moment later, all the rules and requirements of the hunting war were explained. Everyone rubbed their fists in excitement. After learning about the rules, those who were weaker weren't worried. At worst, they wouldn't fight for points in the beginning. Instead, they would let their 800 points be stolen before they went to fight for points. This way, they could rely on the protection of points to get more points. It had to be said that these people were very smart. They quickly used the rules to find a way to avoid being robbed. Of course, their thoughts were calculated by Theta Scarabii. He only said that he could protect them for a period of time, but he didn't say how long that period was. If they didn't work hard, they might really be robbed until they didn't have a single point left. After he finished explaining everything, another spatial flying dragon rushed over. The leader was a young, muscular man. He carried a huge sword in one hand and looked extremely valiant. Seeing Theta Scarabii and the 13 palace masters, the muscular man with a huge sword immediately cupped his fists and shouted, "Disciple Mo Wuliang greets Elder Theta Scarabii and all the palace masters." The 13 palace masters were much stronger than him. Seeing them, the muscular man with the huge sword naturally bowed. One had to admit that there were quite a lot of rules in the Sacred Martial Academy. After bowing, the disciples on the Space Dragon started to size up the new disciples who had passed the assessment. After sizing them up for a while, the disciples immediately relaxed. They hadn't sensed that someone had already broken through to the saint stage after the assessment. Therefore, they believed that it would be easy for them to deal with these new disciples. Although there are many students in this batch, the quality isn't as good as before. In an instant, some of the older disciples started to mock. I remember that when we finished the assessment, there were over 30 geniuses who were unable to suppress their auras and broke through to the saint stage. That's right. The first to break through was Tyrant Spear Yang Xilong. As of now, he has killed his way to the top 10 of the Saint Transformation rankings. His name is Illustrious. As they spoke, the outer sect disciples started to flatter some of the geniuses, causing the 20 inner sect disciples to frown. All right, I've already explained the rules clearly. From now on, you guys will enter the divine spiritual mountain range and begin your half-a-month hunting war. In 3 days, the inner and outer sect disciples will head down together to give you guys some extra ingredients. As his voice rang out, Theta Scarabii lightly snapped his fingers. In an instant, other than the space dragons under the feet of the older disciples, the rest of the space dragons swooped down and rushed towards the divine spiritual mountain range at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh! As they neared the divine spiritual mountain range, the 100 space dragons disappeared into thin air like phantoms blown away by the wind. Ah, the space dragons suddenly disappeared, causing all of the new disciples to fly out. Just as they were about to use the strength within their bodies, they were shocked to discover that all of their strength had been sealed up, causing them to only be able to let out miserable shrieks. Even Lin Yi and the rest were unable to use their strength. However, after sensing for a bit, Lin Yi confirmed that the place where they had fallen wasn't too high. He felt relieved and silently waited for them to land. Bang, bang, bang. In the next instant, the entire divine spiritual mountain range was like dumplings being dropped into a pot, as figure after figure smashed down, causing the entire mountain range to continuously shake and tremble. Ayo! Bang, bang, bang. Amidst the intense tremors, all of the spiritual beasts within the mountain range were alarmed, causing them to run out one after another. This could be considered as saving them the trouble of searching for spiritual beasts. Over 10,000 people. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small number either. The bombardment continued for close to half a quarter of an hour before the 10,000 people had completely landed, scattering around the divine, spiritual mountain range. In the air, Theta Scarabii quietly observed where everyone had landed. After confirming that everyone was safe, she finally breathed a long sigh of relief. 18th Elder. After everything was over, Fairy Xuanji and the other three great starry sky geniuses came to Theta Scarabii's side and gave a slight bow before looking down together. Everyone, it's been hard on you. Theta Scarabii gave a slight nod of her head. This time, in order to arouse the loyalty of the new disciples, Theta Scarabii had specially invited these people over. She wanted the new disciples to feel the importance that Cebu Gakuen placed on them. If not for Theta Scarabii's insistence on inviting them, these people wouldn't have come here. Even more so, they wouldn't be in charge of the assessment by the Starry Sky geniuses. Elder's words are too serious. Chapter 409. The inner sect had always been the most important part of Cebu Gakuen. The treatment was excellent, and it was extremely difficult to enter. The competition was also very fierce. Every year, only 100 new disciples could enter. Furthermore, if the older disciples failed the assessment, they would be kicked out of the inner sect. It could be said that the inner sect was the essence of Cebu Gakuen. Now that they had recruited 1,000 inner sect disciples at once, it might seem that they were much more powerful than before. However, their cohesiveness and strength could not be displayed. More importantly, they all knew that the inner sect's resources could be split among nearly 1,000 people. However, if another 1,000 people suddenly joined, it would definitely not be enough. They also wanted to ensure their own cultivation progress. Hence, even though they knew that this was not something that they should be concerned about, they still asked. Don't worry. Theta Scarabii smiled and said, over the past few years, I've discussed many things with the other elders. After discussing with the Lord, we've created many experimental departments in the inner sect. Now it's time for those secret experiments to be put on the stage. When that time comes, you'll be able to enjoy a whole new treatment. Furthermore, everything depends on points. You little fellows have more points than me. What's there to worry about? No matter what new things come out, you'll be able to quickly come into contact with them. Cough, cough. Hearing this, the 13 palace masters coughed awkwardly. If there weren't many people here, Theta Scarabii's words would have been fine. However, there were still 20 inner sect disciples and 180 outer sect disciples present. This was not giving them any face at all. Those who didn't know better would think that they had exploited the other disciples to obtain so many points. All right, the 13 of you will have to work harder and quickly go down to protect their safety. When this matter is over, I'll ask the first elder to bestow you with more points and treasures. With a wave of her hand, Theta Scarabii hurriedly chased everyone away. Fairy Xuanji and the rest did not want to stay any longer and left one after another, sneaking into the Divine Spirit Mountain Range. Although the Divine Spiritual Mountain Range was close to Cebu Gakuen, With the majority of the area belonging to Cebu Gakuen, there were some desolate and dangerous areas that even Cebu Gakuen was unable to approach. Adding on the fact that the divine spiritual mountain range was filled with spiritual chi, the cultivation speed of the spiritual beast was also extremely fast. It could be said to be extremely dangerous. Therefore, they were rather worried about letting some of the freshmen, who had yet to break through to the Saint Realm, move about by themselves within the divine spiritual mountain range. After Fairy Xuanji and the rest had hidden themselves within the divine spiritual mountain range, Theta Scarabii muttered, "There are 2 danger zones in this region. I hope that you'll be able to successfully explore them." A total of 5,000, 10,000 inscriptions, sacred weapons, and 3 supreme sacred weapons. I hope you can get them. With that, Theta Scarabii narrowed her eyes and sat cross-legged in the void. It had to be said that Theta Scarabii had put in a lot of effort in order to let this batch of freshmen get the best experience and stimulate their potential. Now that everything was going according to her plan, she was very gratified. In the dark forest, Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Sun Wuyu sat cross-legged, waiting for Lin Ye's instructions. I was still worrying about points earlier. I never thought that this hunting war would be such a good opportunity. Lin Yi said indifferently, "When the time comes, you guys will cooperate with me to capture those outer and inner sect disciples. We'll be able to obtain hundreds of thousands of points. At that time, we won't have to worry about points anymore. Those outer sect disciples won't be a problem, but the inner sect disciples of Cebu Gakuen are definitely not weak. We can only deal with them one by one. If there are too many of them, we might not be their match." Sun Wuyu said solemnly, "They'll come down in 3 days. I'll go and test their strength first. Then what should we do in these 3 days?" Silent Soul asked doubtfully. According to the 18th Elder, killing spiritual beasts, exploring dangerous areas, and discovering forbidden areas can all be exchanged for points. We'll go and earn points in the first 3 days. Lin Yi rubbed his nose and said solemnly, "As for those new disciples, if they don't cause trouble, we won't care about them. If they dare to cause trouble, we'll take away all their points." "Yes." Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu nodded slightly. Sun Wuyu, go and scout the surroundings. See if there are any spiritual beasts or dangerous areas. Waving his hand, Lin Yi sent Sun Wuyu to scout the surroundings. Then, he looked at the bracelet on his left wrist. The bracelet was pure silver in color and had exquisite workmanship. It had naturally appeared on his body when he landed. What made him feel strange was that Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu did not receive the bracelet. Therefore, he suspected that the bracelet was used to check and convert points. With a slight tap, a light screen suddenly appeared in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi strength, 5th tribulation half-true, saint points, 1,000 points could be exchanged for treasures. Under the last line, there were countless images. Lin Yi was surprised. With a thought, he tapped on one of the images, and the treasure's introduction appeared. Yin Yang Mirror, supreme grade, sacred weapon. It can absorb other people's attacks. Points required, 10,000 Tyrant Fist 9 shocks, Saint-level fist technique. Gather all your strength at one point and strike with the power of thunder. In an instant, you can explode with amazing strength. There are 9 moves in total. Each move will double your strength. When all 9 fists are used, your strength will increase exponentially. Points required, 20,000 Tyrant Sword, supreme grade, sacred weapon. It contains a murderous aura. Every strike will be accompanied by shocking soul power. Points required for exchange, 20,000 points. It had to be said that Theta Scarabii had put in a lot of effort for them. There were many kinds of things that could be exchanged with points, whether it was materials, sacred weapons, or even saint-level cultivation techniques and martial techniques. What was more convenient was that Theta Scarabii had used the spatial ability to link the treasure vault to everyone's bracelets. As long as someone had enough points, they could tap on the image and spend points to send the treasure over. After looking at the items that could be exchanged with points, Lin Yi was shocked. He did not expect that Theta Scarabii and the others had put in so much effort to get more than 500 supreme-grade sacred weapons. One had to know that many saints did not even have a sacred weapon. It showed how precious it was. "Captain, I'm back." Soon, Sun Wuyu returned and woke Lin Yi up. "Captain," Sun Wuyu panted and reported, "there's a pack of wolves a mile away. They're not weak. However, I also sense the aura of others. It seems that someone has already started to attack. Should we go over? Or go somewhere else? As for the other directions, I didn't detect anything. There's no order of arrival when it comes to hunting spiritual beasts. It's all about strength. Let's go." Lin Yi suddenly got up and led Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu in the direction that Sun Wuyu had pointed. Chapter 410. The Holy Spirit Mountain Range covered a vast area. Even though Sun Wuyu said it was close, the three of them still took half a quarter of an hour to reach the mountain range. Before they arrived, strong energy fluctuations rippled through the air. Mournful wolf howls reverberated in the air, causing Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Silent Soul to stop in their tracks. Ninth Tribulation King level demonic beasts. After a brief shock, Lin Yi's eyes glimmered. Killing a 9 Tribulation King level demonic beast was worth 10 points, and wolves were pack animals. This time they could earn at least 50 points. Of course, that was on the premise that the wolves were not killed by others. Raging flames. In the next moment, a scorching hot aura assaulted their faces, causing Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Silent Soul's hairs to stand on end. Sun Wuyu's face turned frosty, and he said solemnly, "I'll go check it out." As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Wuyu twisted his body and rushed forward. Lin Yi and Silent Soul cautiously approached to avoid disturbing those people. It was quite difficult to kill a pack of 9th Tribulation King level demonic beasts. If there was a situation where both sides suffered losses, they would still be able to reap the benefits. Soon, Sun Wuyu turned around and rushed back, whispering, "A total of 10 people, 6 9 Tribulation half-true saints, 3 8 Tribulation half-true saints, and 1 7 Tribulation half-true saints. They seem to be from the same family. The most powerful one among them is not as imposing as Shunling Xiao's. Sun Wuyu was a Saint Realm expert after all, and he could even estimate the strength of those 10 people. As for the wolf pack, there is 1 wolf king and 7 ordinary 9th Tribulation demonic wolves. The difference in strength is not big. Let them fight first." The corners of Lin Yi's mouth curled up slightly, and he quickly led Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu over. In just a short while, the surging wind and the scorching heat got closer and closer. Squatting under a big tree, Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Silent Soul looked up and saw a group of people fighting with the wolf pack. In the middle, a young man wielding a pair of hammers was fighting a giant black wolf. As the twin hammers danced, bolts of purple lightning surged out one after another. With crackling sounds, they continuously shot towards the giant wolf's body. However, the giant wolf's luxuriant fur actually absorbed all of the lightning. Rumble. As the two of them fought, there was a special fluctuation in the surrounding space, as if it was isolated from the world. The rest of the people also unleashed their strongest strength to fight against the wolf pack. Relying on their advantage in numbers, they did not fall into a disadvantageous position. However, their strength was not as strong as the wolf pack. Not to mention their sharp blades. Even the strongest person among them was entangled with the leader of the wolf pack. As time passed, the few 7th and 8th Tribulation half-true saints gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Roar! Noticing this, the 7 giant wolves howled and turned around to attack the 7th Tribulation and 8th Tribulation half-true saints. At the same time, the fur on their bodies stood on end. Their luxuriant fur was like a natural shield that emitted dense demonic chi. One had to admit that a king-level demonic beast's intelligence was not inferior to a human's. If one's strength was insufficient, one would die miserably when facing them. F***CK. Little 5, little 7, all of you defend with all your strength. One of the ninth tribulation half-true saints gritted his teeth and yelled, I don't believe that you guys won't defend yourselves. The rest of you, attack with all your strength. As soon as his voice fell, the ninth tribulation half-true saint made his move. The long sword in his right hand rippled, and 9,000 rays of sword domain erupted. Buzz! As the sharp sword chi descended, the rest of the people were not willing to fall behind. Metal, water, fire, and a crescent moon appeared, and strong gales appeared. With unstoppable momentum, they landed on the 7 giant wolves' bodies. Boom! A woo! However, the moment the 7 giant wolves received the attacks, their fur actually curled up and changed color. In the next moment, all the attacks were absorbed by their fur. As for the 7 giant wolves, a crazed look appeared in their eyes. A woo! With another long howl, the 7 giant wolves brandished their sharp claws at the 7th tribulation and 8th tribulation half-true saints. At the same time, the attacks that they had absorbed earlier burst out from their bodies. The violent energy was like a hurricane, and it tore through the defenses of the 7th and 8th tribulation half-true saints. Bang! Bang! A violent sound rang out, and the 4 people who were slightly weaker were sent flying like kites with their strings cut. The moment they landed, they felt a burning pain in their internal organs, and they couldn't help but cough out a mouthful of blood. In the air, the remaining people's faces changed, and they hurriedly yelled, Little 5, little 7, are you guys all right? A woo! However, before the 4 of them could reply, the 7 giant wolves changed directions again and jumped up at the same time, pouncing towards them. Originally, they had the advantage in numbers. However, this time around, 4 of them had directly lost their ability to fight. Only the 5 of them remained. Their strength was about the same as that of the 7 enormous wolves. In a one-on-one situation, they would be able to obtain the upper hand. However, at this moment, the enormous wolves were superior in number. Their hearts trembled, and they abruptly sank. Boom! 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 In the midst of despair, the 5 of them exploded with strength that was even stronger than before. For a moment, they didn't fall into a disadvantageous position against the 7 giant wolves. Not only that, but as their attacks intensified, the 7 giant wolves' fur stood on end, and it flickered with a cold light. The fur was extremely sharp, and the 5 of them didn't dare to touch it directly. But as time passed, they were pleasantly surprised to find that the 7 giant wolves' defense was weakening. Although their fur stood on end, it was sharper than before, and it was more lethal than before. But the giant wolves' immunity to spiritual energy and domain attacks had decreased by a lot. Ha! They can't hold on any longer. Brothers kill. Realizing this, the 5 of them were ecstatic, and they stopped attacking crazily. Instead, they stabilized their attacks and entangled the 7 giant wolves so that they couldn't disturb their boss. In an instant, the situation stabilized. On the other side, the 4 of them quickly sat down and began to meditate to recover from their injuries. Fortunately, the 7 giant wolves only wanted to incapacitate them, and they didn't kill them. Otherwise, it would be a problem if they could survive. As for the duel between the youth with the twin hammers and the Wolf King, it had reached a white-hot stage. Every time the twin hammers collided, the entire space would ripple, and shockwaves would wreak havoc like a tidal wave. Under the violent attacks, the Wolf King was like a nimble fish, twisting its body and dodging the twin hammers every time. Then it waved its sharp claws, forcing the youth with the twin hammers to defend himself. Chapter 411. Lin Yi and the other 2 looked at the stalemate and couldn't help but frown. Captain, when do we attack? Sun Wuyu asked in a low voice. If we attack now, we can definitely catch them off guard. No rush. Lin Yi shook his head slightly as he stared at the wolves. For some reason, he felt that the wolves weren't using their full strength. Let's wait and see. Lin Yi rubbed his nose and said calmly, "The Wolf King won't be a match for that person." Sun Wuyu frowned slightly as he sized up the Wolf King and the youth with twin hammers. He could not help but hesitate as he asked doubtfully, "Captain, why are you so sure?" Looking at it now, it seems like the Wolf King has the upper hand. Every swing of the twin hammers has the force of 1,000 pounds. Even if the youth was born with godly strength, he can't swing the hammers for too long, right? Once he's exhausted, the Wolf King should be able to defeat him easily. Hearing this, Solitary Spirit sized him up and nodded slightly. Silent Soul obviously agreed with Sun Wuyu's words. The twin hammers were heavy weapons. Even if they were sacred weapons and bloodline compatible, they still consumed a lot of energy. The Wolf King was dodging very easily. As long as it exhausted the youth's strength, it would be able to kill him easily. Needless to say, the Wolf King had the same idea in mind. Therefore, it kept dodging and never went head-to-head with the dual hammer youth. However, after half an hour, not only did the youth's strength not decrease, but his attacks became even stronger. This made the Wolf King doubt its decision. Outside the arena, Lin Yi pointed at the youth's footsteps and said in a low voice, "Look closely. Every time the youth swings, his legs and waist are all connected. Twisting his waist, shrugging his shoulders, he's using all his joints. His strength is continuously flowing from his feet to his hands. Moreover, his attacks are like dancing. There's a rhythm to them. As long as he maintains this rhythm, he won't be exhausted. On the contrary, his strength will become stronger and stronger. After another quarter of an hour, if the Wolf King doesn't change its strategy, it will lose miserably. Moreover, even if he's exhausted, can't you see it? The waves around him have the aura of the Thunder Territory." At this point, Lin Ye's eyes flashed. I'm sure he has a good understanding of the Thunder Territory. He has at least 30,000 Thunder Territories. His strength is definitely not weaker than Shunling Xiao's. Hearing this, Sun Wuyu involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air. Soon after, he hurriedly lifted his head and looked at the man and wolf who were currently fighting. With Lin Ye's reminder, Sun Wuyu and Solitary Spirit both saw through it. They couldn't help but open their mouths in shock, especially Sun Wuyu. Although he knew that Lin Ye's true strength was stronger than his, on the surface his realm was higher. In terms of probing, Lin Yi shouldn't be as good as him. He never thought that even though his realm was lower, Lin Ye's attainments in every aspect were beyond his imagination. "Then, should we wait?" Sun Wuyu asked doubtfully. And Lin Yi said indifferently, "That guy's strength isn't weak. Clashing with him isn't the best plan. There are many demonic beasts in the divine spiritual mountain range. Our opponents are not only them, but also the people who are participating in the hunt. 3 days later, the seniors will also participate. Although I don't want to form a faction, we can't waste too much of the freshman strength." Phew! Letting out a long breath, Lin Yi said indifferently, "Let the freshmen and seniors clash first. No matter who wins or loses, we'll come out in the end and be the Oriole." "Yes." Sun Wuyu faintly nodded and said in a deep voice, "Then I'll go set up some measures in the surroundings to prevent others from probing, so as to prevent others from finding this place." "Go." Lin Yi waved his hand. Sun Wuyu twisted his body and quickly left. Lin Yi and Solitary Spirit continued to watch the battle between the group of people and the Wolf King. It had to be said that the group wasn't weak. After they stabilized, the 5 of them were able to suppress the 7 giant wolves, causing the fur on their bodies to become even harder. However, seeing this scene, Lin Ye's heart became nervous. Bang, bang, bang. As the fur on the giant wolves became harder and harder, their resistance to attacks became weaker and weaker. Their bodies were covered in green and purple bruises, and even their auras had become much weaker. Ha ha ha! Seeing this, those people were all overjoyed and immediately increased the intensity of their attacks. Roar! High up in the sky, the Wolf King sensed the change in the situation and suddenly let out a long howl. In the next moment, The originally clear sky was suddenly covered by a layer of dark clouds, covering the rich sun. Awoo, awoo. As the sky gradually darkened, the Wolf King and the 7 giant wolves howled. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the dark clouds, 8 silver-white rays of light fell and directly entered their bodies. As the rays of light entered their bodies, the auras of the Wolf King and the 7 giant wolves suddenly skyrocketed. Not only did their auras soar, but their bodies also swelled up. They were originally less than 10 feet in size, but they grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, they became 8 giant wolves the size of small mountains. Hiss, sucking in a breath of cold air, the group no longer dared to hold back. Each of them summoned their sacred weapons, and a strong wave of territory erupted and rippled around them. At this moment, all of them were giving it their all. This caused them to feel incomparably gloomy. Outside, with their strength, not to mention 8 9 Tribulation King level demonic beasts, even if there were 10, 20, or even stronger demonic beasts, they wouldn't be afraid. They never imagined that their first battle in the divine spiritual mountain range would teach them a lesson. Kill. Awoo. Going all out, the 2 sides had already completely turned red from the killing. They no longer held back like they did in the photo, nor did they use flexible fighting methods. With bloodshot eyes, they no longer dodged as they charged forward. Dang, dang, dang. Sacred weapons, armors, and weapons collided with the sharp fur of the giant wolves, causing clear and crisp sounds to ring out. The Wolf King no longer dodged. Relying on its massive size, which was close to 10 feet in size, it raised its head and welcomed the pair of giant hammers of the youth. Bang! Seemingly at the instant when the Wolf King's head collided with the giant hammers, the youth's arms trembled fiercely. He felt a massive force radiating from his arms, causing his entire body to turn numb. Chapter 412. A wolf had a head of steel and a waist of tofu. No matter what kind of wolf it was, their heads and limbs were extremely tough. They could even fight against someone with a higher cultivation level. Awoo! The Wolf King's eyes flashed ferociously as it broke the twin hammer's youth's attack. It finally understood the mistake of its previous strategy. With a long howl, the Wolf King kept waving its sharp claws, attacking the twin hammer's youth again and again. At this moment, the twin hammer's youth's attack had been broken. He could only retreat quickly, dodging the Wolf King's sharp claws. The situation had changed in an instant. It had to be said that the Wolf King had come to its senses too quickly. If it had attacked a little later, when the twin hammer's youth had accumulated his strength to perfection, it wouldn't have been able to do this even if it used the moonlight and had a head of steel. Whoosh! Whoosh! Its sharp claws danced and swept across the space, bringing about a series of air-piercing sounds. The Wolf King stood up like a human. Every inch of its fur stood on end. As it attacked the twin hammer's youth with its claws, it approached him, forcing the twin hammer's youth to not dare to fight it head-on. The Wolf King was like a killing machine now. Its entire body was filled with a sharp aura, making it impossible for others to attack it. At the same time, on the other side, the 7 giant wolves' attack strength and defense had skyrocketed after being strengthened. They no longer dodged and took the attacks of the 5 people head-on, allowing the power of the saint weapons and domains to fall on them. After being strengthened, their fur could absorb even more attacks. Suddenly, the 4 injured disciples jumped up. The next moment, the power in their bodies surged, and several thousand patterned saint weapons appeared in their hands. Kill! The 4 looked at each other and attacked at the same time. For different forces intertwined and spiraled toward the 7 giant wolves. Rumble! The 7 giant wolves didn't expect them to recover so quickly and were caught off guard. The moment the attacks landed, their fur suddenly stood on end, flashing with a cold light. At the same time, they paused. Even their attacks weakened greatly. On the other side, the twin hammer's youth was completely enraged after dodging for a while. He knew that dodging wasn't the only way. He immediately turned around and swung his right hand, sending the giant hammers flying. Swish! The giant hammer flew, bringing with it a strong gust of wind, smashing towards the Wolf King's head. Roar! The Wolf King was not afraid in the slightest as it felt the strong wind. It lowered its head slightly and went straight up. Clang! Almost at the same time that the hammer collided with the Wolf King's head, the hammer was sent flying by the huge force. However, resplendent lightning burst forth and instantly enveloped the Wolf King. Crackle! Amidst the crisp sounds, the lightning was like a blade that continuously struck the Wolf King. An anxious aura gradually emerged and filled the air. Hiss! What powerful lightning! The power of the lightning was shocking as it filled the entire space. Even Silent Soul was shocked when he felt it. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi stared at the ball of lightning. He could sense that the ball of lightning was gradually weakening. Meanwhile, the Wolf King's body seemed like a volcano that was about to erupt. It was a frightening sight. Shua! In the distance, a figure broke through the air and landed beside Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Captain, I've isolated the surrounding area. There won't be any problems. Sun Wuyu rubbed his fists as he made his preparations to fight against the giant wolves. He wanted to see exactly how strong the giant wolves of the divine spiritual mountain range were. Raising his head, Sun Wuyu was slightly surprised as he sighed. Captain, you're right. From the looks of it, those giant wolves won't be able to hold on for much longer. When should we make our move? Let's wait a little longer, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. Those giant wolves definitely have some special tricks up their sleeves. Seemingly at the same time that Lin Ye's voice rang out, the giant wolves in the air once again issued mournful howls. Lin Yi and the other two were startled as they hurriedly looked to the other side. They saw the 7 giant wolves looking at each other after sensing that the Wolf King was trapped within the lightning, before erupting at the same time. Shua! With a turn of their bodies, they actually took the attack head-on and retreated to the side, surrounding the 9 people. When they saw this scene, the 9 people frowned slightly, and an ominous premonition arose in their hearts. Within the strange fluctuations, the 7 giant wolves arched their bodies as the dense fur on their bodies continued to tremble. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, like feathers filling the sky, the fur on the 7 giant wolves shot out like sharp arrows at the same time, exploding towards the 9 people. Poochie! Poochie! There were over 10,000 of those hairs. They were thin, sharp, and extremely powerful. Their speed was as fast as lightning. Before the 9 people could even react, their bodies had already been pierced by the tens of thousands of hairs. Their skin cracked as fresh blood gushed out like a fountain. The intense pain was like a tidal wave as it continuously battered their minds, causing them to howl in pain. The meridians within their bodies were pierced by the sharp hairs, causing them to be unable to muster any strength at all. Like birds with broken wings, they fell to the ground one after another. The bones in their bodies were about to shatter as they could only roll around on the ground. At this very moment, their hearts were filled with fear and despair. Never in their wildest dreams did they imagine that the demonic beasts within the divine spiritual mountain range would actually be so powerful. Not only them, even Lin Yi and the other 2 who had been watching from below felt a chill run down their spines. That wave of attacks from earlier was simply too frightening. Not to mention that group of people, even the 3 of them would be caught unprepared if they were to face that wave of attacks. Tens of thousands of hairs shot out like sharp arrows. That kind of attack wasn't something that ordinary people could withstand. Of course, after the 7 giant wolves had shot out their hairs, their auras had weakened significantly. In fact, their auras had dropped to the level of an early half-true saint. Any first tribulation, half-true saint would be able to defeat them. Sensing that something was wrong, the youth with the twin hammers turned his head to look. When he saw the group of people lying on the ground, his face changed drastically, and he let out a mournful howl. Damn it, all of you must die. Although he didn't have a good relationship with those people, they were still his clansmen. Seeing that they were injured, he immediately flew into a rage. Grabbing the remaining giant hammers with both hands, his aura suddenly rose sharply. Rumble. Lightning flashed, and a total of 30,000 streaks of lightning domain appeared, illuminating the youth. His furious expression was akin to that of a diamond. Oh, the 7 giant wolves didn't show any signs of fear. Even though they were extremely weak, they still glared fiercely at the youth. Their 4 limbs slightly arched, as if they were ready to charge out at any moment. Bang! Chapter 413. A loud sound rang out, and the sound waves that spread out caused the 9 people on the ground to spit out a mouthful of blood. Their auras withered like candles in the wind, and they could die at any time. After all, Sun Wuyi was a saint. With a slight wave of his hand, he dispersed the shock waves. Then the 3 of them raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. The youth also turned around in surprise. When he looked back, he was instantly shocked. How is this possible? Shocked voices rang out. The youth was completely stunned, and the corners of his mouth kept twitching. The Wolf King, who had been continuously attacked by the lightning, had now torn apart the lightning and stepped out gracefully. Not only that, but lightning flashed all over its body. Those lightning bolts kept bursting out of its fur, and it exploded with a powerful aura. It looked like a god. It's impossible. How can you be unharmed in my lightning territory? Shaking his head violently, the youth quickly retreated a few steps and looked at the Wolf King in horror. It had to be said that the youth and the others were too lucky. If they had encountered other demon kings, they might have been able to put up a fight. But they had encountered elemental wolves. Elemental wolves were rather special. They had 3 special powers. Even a saint who was 1 level higher than them would find it difficult to kill them unscathed. However, although they were strong, they also had a weakness. The 3 special powers could only be used once in a period of time. Previously, they had been able to endure endless damage. That was one of their powers. Within 3 days, they could absorb no more than 5 times their own strength. The second special power was to absorb a specific element and temporarily use that element for their own use. It could not harm them. This special power could be said to be their life-saving divine skill. Many saints did not know this and used their strongest power first. Although it would injure them, it would also allow them to temporarily absorb that element. After that, the attacks of the saints were completely useless against them. They could only watch as they escaped. If it was against someone whose strength was similar to theirs, this special power would make their opponent despair. As for the third special power, it was a move that would cause mutual destruction. In other words, it would shoot out all of its fur and cause great damage to the enemy without them noticing. Of course, this move could only be used when the enemy was unaware. Otherwise, the enemy could easily dodge it. Oh, the Wolf King howled as it raised its right claw. A bolt of lightning shot out from its claw and entered the bodies of the 7 giant wolves. With the infusion of the lightning, the 7 giant wolves seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and they all became spirited. At the same time, dozens of tiny bolts of lightning shot towards the young man. "You're courting death." The young man was furious. He swung his hammer and smashed it, shattering the lightning. He glared at the Wolf King and then at the 7 giant wolves. He could not help but feel despair. Just the Wolf King alone was enough to render him helpless. With the addition of those giant wolves, it would be very difficult for him to deal with them. This made him feel incomparably gloomy. He had never imagined that the demonic beasts inside the holy spiritual mountains would be so powerful. Merely 8 ninth tribulation, half-true Saint Beast Kings were enough to make them fall into a crisis. He was even capable of killing demon saints in the outside world. Waving its claws, the Wolf King once again released countless bolts of lightning. They were like lightning snakes that charged towards the young man. This infuriated the young man. This is too shameless. The Wolf King is simply using my own strength to exhaust me. But he did not dare to ignore it. Who knew if the Wolf King would become stronger after absorbing those bolts of lightning? At the same time, the 7 giant wolves with their bodies wrapped in lightning bolts charged towards the young man. They waved their sharp claws and clawed at the young man, courting death. Seeing that 7 ordinary ninth tribulation beast kings dared to attack him, the young man was thoroughly enraged. Holding the hammer with both hands, he leaped into the air, and the power in his arms surged madly. Crackle, crackle, rumble. 30,000 strands of lightning domain power poured into the giant hammer. Resplendent lightning flickered and burst out. Lightning god's hammer. Almost at the same time, the runes on the hammer flickered, and a powerful shock wave burst out. 30,000 strands of lightning domain power in addition to the young man's strength. The powerful energy contained in the 10,000 runes saint artifact exploded at the same time. Boom, boom, boom. That kind of power was like an earth dragon turning over, shaking the entire space. The earth trembled, and powerful shock waves rippled out continuously. Puff! Under such circumstances, the 9 people lying on the ground were caught off guard. Their vision turned black, and they all fainted. Even the light screen that Sun Wuyu had summoned trembled slightly. Hiss! This young man is quite strong. He seems to be a little stronger than Shun Lingxiao. Sun Wuyu was quite surprised. He did not expect that there were so many geniuses among the disciples who passed the Cebu Gakuin's assessment. Any one of them was more powerful than Shun Lingxiao, the #1 genius of the Shun family. It seems that the family behind this person is stronger than the Shun family. Sun Wuyu whispered, "Captain, should we knock him out later? If he sees us, he may come to settle accounts with us in the future." "No need." Lin Yi grinned and said, "This guy is quite strong. If he has the chance, it would be best if he comes to find me." Lin Ye's divine had already reached the sage level. He was not afraid of Shun Lingxiao and the others at all. Instead, he looked forward to having more conflicts with them. Although his divine will was strong, his physical body was still too weak. Moreover, it was uncertain when he would find the second volume of the 3,000 Heavenly Ways. His divine will could not be improved anymore. He had to improve his cultivation level as soon as possible and strive to become a sage as soon as possible. At that time, with the support of 2 sages, he would have the confidence to find the follow-up to the 3,000 Heavenly Ways. Well then, let's continue to watch them fight. Sun Wuyu grinned and lifted his head to look. He was very curious. Would the Wolf King be able to survive such a violent barrage of attacks? Boom! Thunder and lightning continued to erupt, surging everywhere. It took a long time for it to calm down. In the sky, the young man held the hammer with both hands, panting heavily. His chest rose and fell violently. His eyes were fixed on the Wolf King, who was not far away. Soon, the corners of the young man's mouth twitched violently. Despair gradually appeared in the young man's eyes. Not far away, the Wolf King's body was flickering with lightning. It did not look injured at all. Instead, it seemed to have been nourished. Its aura was even stronger than before. "Oh!" With a long howl, the Wolf King leaped up and waved its claws. Its sharp claws broke through the air and slammed toward the young man. Chapter 414. Buzz. Space trembled, and invisible energy waves rippled as they collided with the sharp claws. Bang! A violent explosion resounded, and a shockwave blasted the young man away, pulling some distance away from the Wolf King. As for the Wolf King, it was sent flying several meters away, and it tumbled several times before it managed to stabilize itself. "Someone saved me?" The young man was stunned for a moment, and then he was overjoyed. He looked up and saw 3 figures slowly appearing. "Oh!" The Wolf King turned around, and when it saw Lin Yi and the others, its pupils shrank. Although Sun Wuyu did not reveal his aura, a demonic beast's sense of smell was sharp, and it could tell that Sun Wuyu was not ordinary. As for Lin Yi, he gave it a terrifying feeling, as if it was in an ice cellar. In an instant, The Wolf King narrowed its eyes and retreated a few steps. It already had the thought of retreating. Oh, the 7 giant wolves were continuously shaken by the lightning and shock waves and became confused. When they saw Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Solitary Spirit walking over, they actually let out a long howl and directly pounced forward. You're courting death. Heaven-destroying finger. Lin Yi's eyes turned cold, and he stretched out his right index finger. A faint golden shadow appeared and pressed down on the 7 giant wolves. Holy might rolled out, shocking everyone. Bang! Without any obstruction, the faint golden finger force crushed them. The 7 giant wolves were crushed into a pile of flesh and blood, as if they were dried twigs, and exploded with a loud bang. Hiss! Not far away, the young man's eyes widened when he saw this scene, and he looked at Lin Yi in shock. When Lin Yi had made his move, he had already sensed Lin Yi's cultivation realm. Lin Yi was merely a 5th tribulation half-true saint, but Lin Yi had suppressed the 7 giant wolves with a single finger. Although the 7 giant wolves' strength had weakened significantly, Lin Yi's strength was still shocking to him. This guy is only a 5th tribulation half-true saint, but he can display such power. His strength cannot be underestimated. The corner of the young man's mouth twitched slightly. He had already committed Lin Yi's appearance to memory. In Huang Xiaolon's opinion, a 5th tribulation half-true saint realm expert who could display such strength was definitely someone from a rich family. As the sky-destroying finger fell, the space fell into a dead silence. The Wolf King was horrified. It didn't even have the thought of avenging its little brother and quickly retreated. Sun Wuyu, stop it! As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Wuyu rushed forward. His piercing saint aura burst out, and he suddenly appeared in front of Wolf King. His powerful aura was like Mount Tai, intimidating Wolf King. Not to mention the Wolf King, even the youth was stupefied, revealing an expression of shock. How is that possible? Didn't they say that there weren't any saints in this batch of people who passed the assessment? This person's aura is very solid. He definitely didn't just break through. Why is he here? The youth was stupefied. Could it be that this person was a heaven-gifted genius who could stabilize his cultivation level as soon as he broke through? Heavenly Emperor Fist. Invincible attack. Without the slightest hesitation, Lin Yi decisively attacked, fearing that others would rush over. Rumble. The mighty fist wind was piercingly cold, mixed with 16 times the invincible attack. That punch was like the reincarnation of the Celestial Emperor, carrying the power of thunder and lightning as it suddenly landed on the Wolf King's body. Oh, Wolf King's pupils constricted when it felt the powerful fist wind. It felt like it would die at any moment. With a long howl, Wolf King's hair stood on end as it prepared to use the move to perish together with Huang Xiaolong. However, since Lin Yi was aware of its methods, how could he give a chance? In the blink of an eye, the Heavenly Emperor Fist landed on Wolf King. It was mixed with 16 times the invincible attack power. In less than a breath's time, the biting cold fist wind had already turned Wolf King into a pile of flesh and blood. Rumble. The wind generated by the fist swept out, causing all the trees in the area to be destroyed and their life force to be extinguished. Hiss! The youth was completely dumbfounded, and he stood rooted to the spot. He was already shocked that Sun Wuyu had broken through to the Saint Realm at such a young age. But Lin Yi had given him an even bigger shock. A mere 5th tribulation half-true saint was able to turn a 9th tribulation half-true Saint Beast King into a pile of flesh and blood with one punch. This strength was too monstrous. He did not gain any advantage in front of Wolf King. Did this mean that Lin Yi could also kill him with one punch? Thinking of this, the youth looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of respect. In this world where the strong reigned supreme, strength was king. Of course, Lin Yi did not pay much attention to the youth. Killing 8 9 Tribulation Beast Kings in a row, a total of 90 points, was not a small number. Many thanks to the 3 of you for saving my life. The youth suddenly took a step forward and said respectfully, "This one is Chun Tianyu. May I know this brother's name?" After witnessing Lin Ye's strength, Chen Tianyu had the intention to befriend them. That was why he took the initiative to step forward. Moreover, Lin Ye's group had saved their lives, so it was reasonable for him to step forward. Lin Yi nodded slightly and said indifferently, "No need to thank me. I only want their points." Speaking of which, Lin Ye's original intention was to take advantage of Chen Tianyu and the Wolf King's fight to the death to take advantage of the situation. Who would have thought that the strength of the demonic beasts in the Saint Spirit Mountains would be so strong that Chen Tianyu and the others had almost died? Hearing this, Chen Tianyu couldn't help laughing bitterly. He had spent so much effort and suffered such serious internal injuries to injure the 7 giant wolves. But it was a pity that all the points fell into Lin Ye's hands in the end. But on second thought, Chen Tianyu cupped his fists and said, "Brother must be joking. If it weren't for your help, not to mention the points, I'm afraid my brothers and I would have lost our lives. You are fully deserving of these points. Then it would be impolite for me to refuse." Lin Yi nodded slightly and sized up the other 9 people who were still unconscious, then looked at Chen Tianyu. Observing Chen Tianyu from a close distance, Lin Yi realized that Chen Tianyu's strength was not inferior to Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianhang, and the others, but he was still not a match for the 9th Tribulation half-true Saint Beast Kings in the Saint Spirit Mountains. According to Theta Scarabii, there were Saint Realm demonic beasts in the Saint Spirit Mountains. If ordinary disciples encountered them, wouldn't they be courting death? What is this Cebu Gakuin doing? If we encounter those saint beasts, many people will die. Is this assessment so cruel? During the battle, just now, Lin Yi had scanned the surroundings with his divine sense, but he did not detect anyone in the surroundings. It was clear that Cebu Gakuin had completely abandoned all the participants. Even if they died, they would not care. This made Huang Xiaolong gloomy. In half a month's time, if they were unlucky, perhaps 3 out of 10,000 participants would die. The demonic beasts here are quite strong. Be careful in the future. Collecting his thoughts, Lin Yi said indifferently, 3 days later, the old disciples will come down, so be careful. Many thank for the reminder. Chen Tianyu cupped his fists and was about to speak, but Lin Ye's group of 3 twisted and disappeared in front of him. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.